Record. All right, welcome, my friends. It's good to be here with you all, and I have a very special guest today, my new friend Kris, who I'd like to introduce. He is an alchemical artist of many mediums, digital, graphic, video, and he also does a lot of great photography. He is a spider on the Weaving Spiders Welcome group, a wonderful group, by the way, that I've been interacting with for a couple weeks now. So many good people there that we can talk about a little later, give them a quick shout out. He's also a pirate radio host on Fool's Bard Radio. Awesome Telegram group. Thank you for the invitation there. And additionally, a researcher of all things weird. This is exactly why we have connected today. And last but not least, he's a soon to be published fantasy author. Really looking forward to asking you about that. But enough of that. Kris, welcome to Loco Listens. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, man. It's so nice to finally talk to you. And I just want to say, once again, we brought up the Weaving Spiders Welcome group. And I want to give a quick shout out to some of our friends here that you've introduced to me, and we've been able to all connect together. That would be Jim, Alan, Chance, Gabe, Rachel, Kaylee, Sean, Gordy, Snake Jones. So many good people. I'm sure you can share a bunch of stories about them. And I really quickly want to just give people a little bit of insight. If you want to learn more about those great people, I'll give you two leads here: the Interverse podcast and the False Reality Check podcast. Both excellent programs. Really looking forward to learning more about these wonderful people. But today we are here to talk about a couple things. But let's start with you. And I would like to ask all my guests this one question in the beginning, and it is this, Kris. When did you start to speak your truth?
I would have to say probably fairly recently, even within the last like year,
Mm,
possibly. Like I said, I did write a fantasy novel, and that was, you could consider that my truth, because that was a lot of like divine flow inspiration. So that has a lot of encoded into it. But like me actually speaking out, like verbally and connecting with people about my healing journey and everything and my truth, that's fairly recently for sure.
amazing, amazing. And we've been interacting on this Telegram channel through the Weaving Spiders Welcome group. Once again, love you guys. All of you guys are there. Wonderful. And they facilitated so many vulnerable conversations and insightful, linguistic, fun Twilight language type of chats. And I'm really happy to be a part of it. And for you, what was your journey like when you first discovered this Weaving Spiders Welcome group, and how did they influence you moving forward?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I was actually trying to think about this the other day because I had the feeling this was going to come up. Um, so, as I mentioned to you before we got on, I know Chance of Universe, and I first got into his Telegram when he invited me. He was like, "Hey, I started a Telegram group," so I started there. And I just started chatting with people, and then um, I think I first got introduced to the Weaving Spiders people because Gordy of Weaving Spiders does a movie night every Friday night,
That
and
sounds
then he
fun.
kind of passed the torch down to Alan and I to
Mhm.
kind of like helm like the movie nights,
Yeah.
but which is awesome. But like, he had started this Friday night group, so where we all meet on Telegram and we watch a movie, we laugh, we make fun of it, we analyze it, because we all are into that sort of thing.
Nice.
And so I went there first, I think, and started talking to them on Friday nights. And I really just started, like vibing with them. And it was a really um, comforting and really good conversations and just everything. And um, after that, I finally started to watch Weaving Spiders, and then
Mm,
I would eventually to go on to actually be on Weaving Spiders,
nice.
like on the Dune special that Alan did.
So
which
you
was
were all
awesome.
analyzing the film Dune together. This was like a group conversation where you were breaking down like symbolism and things like that.
Yeah, what was cool about that was Alan had put out an open invite in our like movie group and everything. It was like, hey, if anyone wants to watch we had just watched um that Friday we had watched the Lynch version, but it was like a fan edit that was like 3 hour
Oh,
extended cut,
interesting.
which is like really cool. And then he was like, hey, if anyone wants to watch the new one that's coming out, we can watch it. And he started his own like small Telegram group just to discuss Dune. And he said whoever wants to do it could be on. And I was like, I would.
Yes,
So
please.
yeah, so I was gonna watch it anyway. So I watched it, and I went on there, and that was my first like face-to-face interaction with like all of them. And so it's all documented there. My first like um facial
So
like
before that, it was all
meeting.
like texting on the Telegram group, and this was the first time you were revealing yourself visually, right?
Yeah. Well,
Interesting.
I had called Rachel like the day before because I knew she was gonna do it.
Hmm.
And even though I know chance and everything, I this was like the first time I've like presented
Hmm.
any type of research I've done. And so like I know Rachel had been on Weaving Spiders for a little bit, and so I asked, and we had been talking, so I asked her if we could call the day before and
Hmm.
like go over our notes.
It's a good
She was
idea.
she was so
Yeah.
kind. She said yes, and we
Nice.
went over it. So we had like briefly like a small interaction beforehand,
Hmm.
but that was like first time of like meeting anybody. Then, like I said, the Friday night we talk and everything, but like yeah, very first like facial
Awesome.
reveal interaction, and it was amazing. What I liked about that episode, and if anyone wants to watch it, go to YouTube. It's also on the audio form is on the Weaving
Hmm.
Spiders podcast on all the places that their podcast is available. But if you want to watch the video one, go to YouTube, search Weaving Spiders Dune or Weaving Spiders Spiders on Spice versus the Worm, which is the
Spice.
amazing
Yes. Yeah.
name that Alan came up with, which I love. And yeah, why I would suggest that one really quick over other, because like everyone analyzes Dune, just like everyone analyzes The Matrix.
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah, what I liked about, and it's nothing wrong about analyzing those films for sure.
It's a whole lot of fun.
Um, yeah, a whole lot of fun. But what I think is very valuable with ours is um, we kind of went deeper through that the base level symbolism that
I see.
like I said, like everyone talks about. We're like you can look for all that symbolism everywhere, and it wasn't
Mhm.
said that that's what we was gonna do, but that's kind of what we all kind of did. Was we kind of went a step further and found out some really crazy things. Um,
Interesting. So
so
for
yeah,
people who may have never been a part of this Weaving Spiders Welcome, these events, these videos, when you say you're going deeper, are you talking about like finding archetypes or connecting like tarot archetypes, the zodiacs, like what kinds of, it could be particularly with Dune, but are there any common themes that you've seen, any common webs, uh, that you've been weaving with this group, whether it's with Dune or other films or other topics? Like, how would you describe this group overall, and what kinds of um, values that you all share together?
oh, that's a hard question. Because well, we we all come from multiple backgrounds.
Mhm.
You know, I think I'm the youngest one actually.
How old are you, if you don't mind?
uh, I'm in my mid 20s,
Okay, me too.
so
I'm turning
yeah, so
27 in 2 weeks.
yeah, so like all of them are like have like 10 plus years
Hmm.
like on people like us, so they're very welcoming uh for them to like open up opened their space up to me and
Mm,
let me have a space to grow, and yet they're
yeah.
growing too, and it's great. But yeah, I find it um, very welcoming.
Hmm.
Of course, it's called We Inspired Welcome. Um,
Yeah, right. It's all in the name right there.
it's all in the name. But yeah, we all come from different backgrounds, but we all have, this inner hero's journey
Yes.
that we've all gone on. We all strive for truth,
Mm,
and we've all kind of been like the black sheeps of our families and our wherever we live, or
yeah.
our areas. We, especially today in uh you know post 2020, where like everyone just doesn't want to talk.
Mm.
No one,
There's been a
everything's
lot of
just like,
communication breakdown in these last, I mean, this whole 2020 decade has put a big strain on communication, but it's ironic because, we were talking earlier about in 2020 kind of reaching like a plateau, and I personally was not speaking to many people, and then I slowly crept into this podcasting community, and now that I have so many people to talk to, and I've never met them face to face, but they've been so open and welcoming, like you said. So it's really cool that this community has established itself. It's been established for a while, but we just happened to
yeah,
wander into it at the perfect time, you know?
I know. It's just like talking to a lot of the other spiders that's been in it for a while.
Mm.
There's a lot of like things that I didn't know, but there's also like people that I've only read about, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I know them." Like um, Sean of Weaving Spiders SB, him and Jim had a show before Weaving Spiders called RX Only Picture Show,
Hmm.
and they had Tracy Twyman on it. And
Hmm.
as soon as I heard Tracy name, I'm like, "What? You guys knew Tracy?"
Will you fill me in? Like I personally don't know Tracy. The name sounds familiar, but I'm not entirely
She
sure.
she did a lot of research on multiple different things. She talked about lizard people and Baphomet
Oh,
and like
okay.
all
Love all those topics.
like
Yeah.
the deep, yeah, like the really deep stuff, which is really
Love
cool.
it. Does she write
Yeah,
books? Is that how you
yeah,
discovered
she
her?
wrote books.
Okay.
She I don't know the full story. You would have to ask SB and Jim about it. But sadly, she isn't around anymore. And um, I it sounds like there might have been some mysterious things happening around her.
Yeah.
Um, but that was when you get so deep, things like that like happen, and
Yeah.
all her stuff that I've came across has been really interesting. Um, but things like that, like it's like you know I guess we can call them normies if you want. Like they're like,
Yeah.
oh, famous people, and all like I can't believe I want to go and meet this famous people. I've met famous people before,
Hmm.
and I
Hmm.
couldn't have cared less.
Yeah. I mean,
But then
it's nothing special.
when S when S like when SB mentioned Tracy's name, I was like, what? My eyes lit up. And I was like, wait,
Nice.
what? Like that to me, that's really cool because those are people that have you know put in so
Mm.
much work on their life to do this work. You know, the people that Chance has interviewed.
Yeah.
It's really cool to just know that I know Chance, and Chance has talked to these people. He's been on the Unslaved podcast with Michael Tessarion. He's
Mm.
had Michael Tessarion on Universe. He's talked to David Whitehead, and like all these people that have, like, to me, are just like basically like superstars.
Right. Right.
Like they've put in all this work, and then I'm like,
Mm.
wow, I actually like I know people that them.
Yeah.
I'm in the same community. I am on my own similar path to that,
Right.
and
Did you experience at
it's
at some point, like, so for example, I a couple years ago I bought a Terrence McKenna shirt because because I was really into listening to these lectures and learning about all sorts of topics. He likes to focus a lot on fungus, or the plants in the Amazon, things like that. So I bought this Terrence McKenna shirt just kind of like for fun, and none of my friends that I really knew of were into him like I was, or maybe they didn't really know him at all. So I'm wearing the shirt, just, just out doing whatever, and running into strangers who are like, "Oh my God, I know Terrence." And we connected in this kind of synchronistic way where it's like, "Wow, I thought I was the only one who was absorbing this kind of content." And it's so nice to now, like, surprisingly meet other people almost randomly, and I would say synchronistically, that are also a fan, or not necessarily a fan, but they're into those same ideas, and that's really gratifying. And that's kind of how we were brought together too. And
Yeah,
earlier you had brought up, we're talking about Weaving Spiders Welcome and this wonderful group, but you also brought up your own healing journey. And I've certainly gone through stretches healing different aspects. I know healing is a process that is never complete. It's one of those infinite games that we play with our soul and our spirit and our mind and our body. So would you be willing to share recently in the 2020s or anything before that, what has helped you heal? And I'm asking mainly because there could be someone listening who's going through the same thing. So what kinds of things have you felt have helped you tremendously other than this wonderful community? I mean, community is huge, but what else
yeah,
have you sought out, or what else has found you that you think has helped you quite a lot?
yeah. First off, to kind of book in the thing about you talking about your Terrence McKenna shirt,
I love
I think
Terrence.
that yeah, that's really cool. I actually had a guy. I did like this Uber. It was like Uber or Lyft,
Mm.
and I just was in it, and the guy just opened up to me and started talking about how he went to the rainbow gathering back in the day.
Oh,
He
yeah,
was
yeah,
hippie, and he was like telling me all these crazy stories. And like I've had people do that. Like I don't wear I haven't I don't wear a Terrence McKenna shirt or
right.
anything,
I don't really
but
wear it that much
people
anymore, but yeah.
but but people come up to me, and it's kind of like that. It's just like there's something
Hmm.
about me that's just like people want like to like open up and tell me
Yeah.
all these crazy stories. I'm just like, okay, like I'll listen. Like I've had this guy at the party. I was in high school, so this was like way before you know
Yeah, yeah.
I was where I am now. He started talking to me about his grandfather being in the Navy and
Hmm.
his experience with sirens.
Oh, sirens, you said?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. So like we're
and
talking like Homer, like the Odyssey, like those sirens that lure people in and then they get trapped in this
yeah,
it's
he
like
was like his grandpa. Um, he said I was on my friend's balcony on his where he used to live on his apartment. It was a full moon, and everyone was inside. I thought I was on the balcony by myself. I was looking at the moon, and this voice came behind me, and there was like two like camping chairs. And
hmm.
this guy goes, "Beautiful full moon, amazing night for a siren."
Oh.
So I guess I'm gonna sit down and listen to this guy.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, my grandpa." He asked me if I believed in sirens. I was like, "Well, anything's possible." And
Mm.
he was like, "Yeah, my grandpa used to be in the Navy, and basically, the a short condensed version of the story was they was re stocking like their ship and everything for like equipment,
Hmm.
and um they was told by the locals of this island, when you leave, don't go see that island in the distance. Don't
Hmm.
go to it. It's haunted.
Stay away from there,
You
yeah.
Yeah, stay away from there. And they was like, okay, whatever. And then they got their stuff and they headed off. This is around the time he said they first started letting women into um like the
The
Navy and
Navy,
everything.
yep, yep.
Yeah, so there was only a few women, so it was predominantly still a male
Right.
unit. And all as soon as they started to get close to the island, they started hearing like this beautiful singing, and I was like, "Oh, there's a woman stuck on that deserted island.
Mm.
We better go get
Wow.
her." And then what stopped them is the women of the crew was like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you talking about? That's just some screaming creature, screaming bloody
Uh,
murder. Like, no, don't. So they
the
had to
voices
talk.
of reason.
Yeah, they literally had to talk them in out of going to do it. I don't know
Yeah.
how valid that story is. It's just some crazy story that
There's
someone,
a
but
lesson
like,
there, I guess, when locals warn you of the local dark magic, you should probably listen to them. You know, they
yeah.
totally did. They didn't even listen to them at all. They just went straight for the island.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's really cool. You know, when we like attract
Hmm.
things in our field. You know, we have a, a torrent field of
Yeah,
energy around us, and when things enter our orbit, you know, we attract certain things,
right.
and so it's interesting to like yeah, I don't have anything that like on my face is like I'm into weird stuff, you know. I
Yeah,
don't
there's
have
no
that
like
written across my forehead.
sticker or like symbol that's like beaming
Yeah,
out to everyone. Yeah.
yeah. So that's really cool on that. But as far as my healing journey, um, yeah, um, I would have to say, um, I mentioned to this to you on a Telegram chat,
Yeah.
but I've I have cerebral palsy,
Hmm.
and I've talked to people um, who also have things like cerebral palsy and various other conditions,
Hmm.
and um, at places like metaphysic fairs and other places like that.
Hmm.
And I've witnessed things myself, miracles that has happened with alternative healing
Yeah.
and alternative therapy, sound healing, Reiki, all of these different type of things, and can be perfectly paired with things like physical therapy because we are
Oh yeah.
both, you know, we're like similar to Aang, you know, when we're talking about Avatar the Last Airbender, you know,
Yes.
we are that bridge,
Hmm.
you know. Um, so you have to be able to work in both,
I see.
and um, trying to walk that line of doing the physical work, but also doing that spiritual work,
Hmm.
integrating it, which we're going to talk about today, integrating the shadow.
Yes, sir.
Um, so things like that, which is going to go perfectly with a later conversation. But things like that, I think, even people that are in like the I see at metaphysical fairs, they're like the new age kind of crowd. You know, they're always like, oh, you got to do this, you got to do this, you know, and they're
Mm,
like, I have tendencies to do, you know, X, Y, and Z,
right.
or you know, these things. Where it's like, okay, that's cool. How are you integrating it?
I see.
How are you bringing that in?
A
How are
lot
you
of
using it?
doing and doing and doing, but where is like the reflection?
Yeah. So
Mm,
there's, for me, I've noticed that what I found getting good tools to do that for, because I was like, how
mhm,
do I do this? How
mm,
I know things are wrong. I don't want to be stuck in this.
mm,
Doing things, learning things like the alchemical process,
mm,
learning about how energy works. Um, I've did this amazing course by Zane Daniels.
mhm.
He's a light worker. He also writes a amazing comic called Righteous.
Righteous.
Um,
Okay.
it's really cool. It's kind of like a positive zombie apocalypse.
Oh,
It's like
wow. Okay.
it's like this this guy that works at this office job. He gets visited by this light being and like awakens him, and
Mm.
he has to do everything he can to help other people and do good. Like he can't turn people
Oh,
away,
okay.
but every
Yeah.
time he helps someone, it spreads and they get awakened.
Ah, they
So
infect them with yeah, that gratitude, that love, that light.
yeah,
Yeah. I love that.
but it's so hard to he finds it so hard to work in our reality. Like he
Hmm.
loses at the beginning, he loses his job and his wife leaves him
Mm.
because like he's not the same person he was before.
Right.
But then once everybody starts waking up, he gathered this community, and
Nice.
it's like they kind of they positively plot to do something, and it's
Mm.
still ongoing. It's a really cool.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Can you tell
um,
us the author's name again? So it's called Righteous, and who created this comic series?
Zane Daniels. Zane
Zane
is
Daniels.
um, Xane.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah,
That's,
he's also a light worker.
hmm.
But he does this. So I think he started 2020. He did. He started this online class. And he. Well, I've met him in person as well. I'm friends with him in real life, but he does this online class, so you don't have to be there in person.
Nice.
Well, he um, helps give you the tools of what you need. It's kind of like this really cool college course, but like
Okay.
is he giving you all these like different tools that you can use,
Hmm.
um, and it helped me a lot for what I was going
Nice.
through, and it's all recorded, and so you can go back and visit it. And once you sign up, you're like a member for life, so you
Oh,
get
awesome.
access to
Awesome.
everything. So it's just like a one-time payment, which is really cool. But he also has a YouTube channel where he does smaller things, but it's not his full package. And he also does remote chakra awakenings
Oh,
and
okay.
spirit detachments, and works with your meridians. He
Awesome.
has spirit guides he talks to, that are um, have really insightful things
Nice.
that he's communicated
You
through
can
them. It's
contact Zane Daniels for these remote sessions. These,
Yes, he's a really cool guy. I highly suggest, if that's something that if you're like me and you want to do the work, and you're like, where do I
mm,
start, and you need that visual, like someone there,
yeah.
like kind of
We all need guides
helping
for
you
sure.
along.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
he's built a community. Like he has a group. So once you do his class, like you're part of the group, so
I love
you can
that.
like talk to all
Nice.
these people. So like
Nice.
it's a really good thing that he's been doing. And
Mm,
I mean, he's just a cool guy. So um, yeah, I think
good
as far
stuff.
as healing journey, that's what I would
Yeah.
suggest
And
is
by the way,
once you.
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just to summarize it, once
Mm,
you decide that you need to do your journey, that hero's journey,
right.
and then you need to set out a plan. And
Mm,
that planning and it's not going to go as you think it is in your head, of course, and that's fine. But like gathering your tools and like actively setting out on that journey, finding maybe a mentor, all that's excellent advice, I think, for someone that's in a similar position.
I love that. Yeah, there's this process. You gather the information. You learn how to use all these tools, some of which, and we'll bridge this into our discussion of Avatar the Last Airbender, where we are bridging the spiritual and the physical. Like, let's say if you only focus on the physical, if you're like doing exercise, lifting weights, running, you're doing yoga, you're trying to build up your physical body, but you're detached from your spiritual connection, it won't work out in the best way possible. Merging both, integrating both, and then coming up with a plan. And speaking of that plan, I want to ask you, you had mentioned, and we brought this up in the intro, that you're working on some digital art, some photography. You've actually put together this awesome avatar, this Aang illustration for us for this episode. But the other thing I want to ask you about is this project that you've been working on. Would you like to give us a little information about this? Is it a book that you're working on? Or is it a series? Is there anything else you could tell us about it?
Yeah, um, it's called The Alchemist Flower,
The Alchemist
which is
Flower.
interesting because, like I said, I mentioned to you before we started this call, I've been being called to strengthen my relationship with the elements recently
Mm.
through many different um, aspects of my life. And I went through Lindsay of Rogue Ways. Shout out to Lindsay's amazing stuff she's doing over there. She does this thing called
Absolutely.
when they brightness. And I went to that, and this guy named Phoenix, he was like this really awesome like alchemist, but like in like the fantasy idea of alchemist that you're pitching in your head,
Hmm.
like with the whole like lab and like the get up, like
Yep.
he was full on. I'm gonna be he has 2 classes, one's paid and the intro is free. I'm gonna
Mm.
be doing the intro, and like I've been reading the book of the 5 rings,
Excellent.
which
Nice.
plays into Avatar so much as well. And it's about elements. Um, but I've been being called through this alchemical process, and of course things like cooking and art to be considered alchemy as well.
Mm.
So
The
I've
Alchemist Flower is a beautiful name, by the way. I just want to say that.
yeah, I when I came up with it, I just did it because I thought that was a cool name. Like, to be honest
It
with you,
is.
I was trying to tell it was a catchy name, but now looking back, I'm just like, wow, like that means so much to me more now.
It's evolved
than
over time. Yeah.
yeah, which is really cool. So a little background story on that. I a few years ago, I've been studying on the idea for a little bit.
Mm.
I was working with a guy named Greg Sipes. He voices Beast Boy on Teen Titans
Oh,
and
wow.
Michelangelo from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He
Wow.
has a band called Sipes and the People. He reached out to me and wanted me to work on some music videos for him. I worked on 3 music videos for him.
Mm.
He let me do basically anything I wanted. He was like, just be creative. And he sent me some like we had talked about things that he wanted to incorporate
Mhm.
into it, and we was talking, and um, so he sent me some stuff that I was researching to kind of inspire me to kind of get on the same vibe that he was trying to channel through the music.
Mhm.
And I had this really interesting dreamlike experience. There was basically the seedling to the alchemist flower.
Mm.
And then when I woke up, I was like, oh my, like I hopped out of my bed and I was like, oh my god, like I called my friend. I was like, oh, that's your story. Like I was like writing it down like a madman. And at the time, it was very. I was still in the whole. I was going to college for film at the time, so I
Okay.
was very tapped into like what was popular in Hollywood.
Mhm.
So like when I first thought like how I could adapt this into a story, it was slightly different than what it turned into.
Mhm.
Um, but then after I started writing it, I sat on it for about a year. I just kind of had it marinating in my head, and as I was like having it slowly on that back burner, the idea started to evolve as I was evolving,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so it started to grow. And finally, when I did go revisit it, it turned into this crazy psychedelic story, very kind of also inspired by great epics like Lord of the Rings and of course
Oh,
Avatar.
love
Like
it.
it's going to
Yeah.
be a trilogy.
Okay.
It's similar to how Avatar seasons are called Book One, Book Two, Book Three.
Right.
I'm calling mine Composition One, Composition Two,
Ah.
Composition Three, because it has to do with a lot of frequency, sound, vibrations. The magic
Yes.
is all vibratory,
Yeah, and a composition is
and
like a collection of music, right? It's like that same
mhm,
frequency. Yeah.
yeah. So I so I studied that propelled me to do a bunch of research on a bunch of different things, and the first thing I did was I storyboarded the whole story, and I
Mhm.
have pictures of it. I need to fine, but I did it on sticky notes, and I
Nice.
put I was moving at the time, and so my wall was bigger,
All
and
spread
I just
out.
had this spread out, just this whole story. I was like moving around, like,
Yeah,
okay, this.
yep. Yep.
I was like a madman, like trying to connect all the
It's like
dots.
as within, so without. You got it all like spread out there. So like, is your plan to create a graphic novel or like a comic? What kind of
Um, so
product do you imagine?
I wrote after I storyboarded it. I wrote the first draft. I did some editing, and it's um, it's all ready to publish. But as
Nice.
soon as I was ready to publish it, that's kind of when I started to go through my shadow work, and I
Okay.
lost a lot of confidence.
Hmm.
And so I've been sitting on it for about a year and a half or something like that.
I
It's
see.
just kind of just been sitting on my shelf, like, publish me, publish me. And I'm just like, but now that that's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for like the Weaving Spiders
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
They've gave me that space to grow, so I'm getting my confidence back,
Nice.
and I'm like, I can feel that like it's about time to publish it. Like I'm gearing up for it. Since it's been a while, I want to read through it one more time just because
Hmm.
it's been a hot minute since I've even like touched it, so I'm gonna revisit it. Um, but I can um, send you. I should have sent you this art before, but I have a book cover all
Oh,
picked
cool.
out.
Yeah, yeah. I would
I
love
had
to take a look. Yeah.
a artist friend of mine who's been on the Universe podcast. He did the cover, amazing
Nice.
job at the cover. And then another friend of mine did the textography, came up with this really cool font. I told him,
Nice.
I said, I really like the kanji font of Avatar. I said, can you do
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but make it your own? Like you kind of
Nice.
make it like Eastern mixed with like other different like Norse and like all
Yeah.
these others. Like make it to where it's like it could be these ancient languages type of
Mm.
writing, but
Like a
it's also
hieroglyphic
gonna it's
style. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like a blended style. Because
Would you?
that's what I did. In my in the story, I took I researched many different cultures,
Hmm.
um, and the whole idea is of the story. I the elevator pitch of it
Sure.
is a kid wants to plant a flower, and the evil cult government says no.
Ah, yes. The pesky evil cult government always getting in the way of our flowers.
Which is it sounds really silly, but there is a lot more to it.
It's a great metaphor, man. Yeah.
Yeah. It
And by the way,
I
it's so cool that you were able to collaborate with artists that you are friends with, and you've all come together to produce this. And it's like, you could reach out
yeah
to a random artist. You can go on Fiverr and find someone, but you've connected with your friends, these fellow weavers, and it's so cool that
yeah. I
you're
also
bringing all these
I,
people together.
I also connected with a girl through Instagram. She was showing Avatar stuff, and I was like,
Mm,
"Oh, you have a really cool style, and you're doing all this Avatar stuff." Um, I want to make an animated promo for my book. Are you going to be down to like collabing with
mm,
me to do it? And she said, "Yeah." We clicked. She is awesome. So I have an animated ad, and like not many people's going to see the animated ad. I know. So like like dumping on that time and energy is going to be like profitable in like a very big way, but I'm not looking for it to be profitable. I'm
yeah,
doing it because
it's a
it's
passion
something that
project.
yeah, I want to do.
I feel you. That's the
And
same way
then
with my podcast too. Like I'm doing it for fun and to connect with others, and it seems like you've been able to achieve both of those as well as like bringing these artists together, connecting with that girl on Instagram, and having fun doing it. It seems like it's done a lot
yeah,
for you too. It's a healing process in and of itself, is this creation.
yeah. And the last two people I got in with it was I have multiple artist friends that do music,
Hmm.
bands, and DJ. But I got my DJ friend to produce a track, and this
Nice.
other artist friend that also has been in a verse. He goes by the name Mindful Expansion. He's a
Oh, okay.
conscious rapper,
Was
and
he just
he
on the other night, like last night?
no, he hasn't been on for a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's really cool. Me and him collaborated on the lyrics and like did this whole like spoken word poetry. It's like
Nice.
the opening to Avatar when like his guitar is like narrating the opening, but it fit like a rhyme as if it was like a
Oh,
rap.
okay.
And he does it over the beat, and it's so cool. I
Nice,
love it.
nice.
And so like I, cause that was my point. One of the things that I wanted to do was not only am I writing the story for me, but I also wanted to get as many people as I could on this project and
Yeah,
like
a
connect with
collaborative
them and
effort. Yeah.
collaborate. Yeah. And then one of the things that's also going to be cool is the world I create in the story is the cosmic egg.
Hmm.
And I I did it because I thought that's interesting. It's not like Star Wars spacey. It's not like generic fantasy. Like doing this like cool cosmic egg type of story, and it helps me break up the story for each layer of like the going inward.
Hmm.
So it's just it fit the story so well, and the more I'm on this journey, the more I'm understanding things like the cosmic egg, and like no one really knows about the cosmic egg. Like
Hmm.
everyone's just like flat Earth or round Earth, Star Wars
Yeah.
or just
Cosmic egg is one
nothing.
of those more out there alchemical concepts, and maybe we could use this as a segue. Like earlier, you had mentioned the intro of Avatar, and that's what we're gonna get into next. And
Yeah.
the first element that's mentioned is Earth, right? She says Earth. Do you want to go into like if you're thinking about the intro and this monologue that Katara delivers, for anyone who doesn't know, would you like to repeat it back to us? There might be a couple people listening who have never seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, but they're still here listening, and thank you guys, by the way. But how would you introduce Avatar to someone who maybe vaguely knows about it or has never seen it before? What would you say?
I've actually done that before.
Nice. It's a
So
true
this is
honor, by the way.
yeah, it is an honor. I'll kind of tell a story as
Mhm.
well because I think it fits. There's this like CD music movie warehouse, kind of like where like record warehouses.
Okay.
Where it's like it has a bunch of like movies and also music. It's just like a entertainment hub that we
Nice.
have here, and um, I went there with my uncle one day, and this was shortly after Korra ended,
Okay, Legend of
and
Korra. So this was the spin-off series or like a sequel to Avatar: The Last Airbender.
yes, and so we was just in the movie section. I just hear like whisper on the wind,
Yeah.
this little young voice go, "I want to find Avatar or something," and
Yeah.
I turn over, and it's this little girl who could have not been born when Avatar came out,
Yeah.
which we'll get to because I looked at um the
Release
birth
date?
chart
Yep.
for the release date,
Hmm.
which Kaylee of We Must Fires helped
Yeah,
me out
shout out to
with.
Kaylee.
Shout out to Kaylee. So we'll get to that. But so when I heard that, and I turned around and I saw this little girl with her, who I'm assuming was her like grandfather, because it's
Mm.
like this older gentleman, and they was trying to find it, but they was looking at like the anime section, but at the back wall is where all the box sets are
Hmm.
in, in the in this little warehouse store, and I knew that since I've been there over the years, and so I went over to you know I told my uncle, hey, I'm gonna be right back, and I went over to this little girl and her grandfather, and I said, hey, um, if and I acted if I was gonna work there,
Hmm.
and I was like, hey, if you're looking for Avatar, um, it's if you want the box set, it'll be here on the back wall. And I started to walk off as I was talking, and they followed me, and I guided them to Avatar, and I was like, oh, right here. And I took it off the shelf, the box set, and I handed it to her. I asked her why she was interested in it, and I expressed how much I enjoyed it.
Mm.
And I said there's also a sequel series called The Legend of Korra. If you follow this wall, it should be under, I think, the K's. I think they go by Korra, not Legend. So it should be in the
Nice.
K's.
You're able to
It's
guide her
awesome as well.
exactly where to go. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I guided her, and they were just and then I just walked back to my uncle, and I was like, I just did this thing. It's so cool. But yeah, the Avatar the Last Airbender. So um, basically, and to be clear, we're mainly going to be talking about The Last Airbender, not The Legend of Korra.
Hmm.
I
We'll do a
might
whole
briefly,
separate episode on that sometime.
yeah, I might mention something here
Yeah.
and there if the conversation flows in that direction.
Sure, sure, sure.
But yeah, like you said, it's a whole different kind of
Yeah.
worm, different episode.
Yep.
Um, but so The Last Airbender, um, it is about um, this ancient fantasy world where there's 4 nations, and one each of them has this relationship with a certain element, and it's ingrained in the culture, in their in their religions, in their
Mm.
philosophies, um, their the way they build their houses, everything.
Yeah, their
So
values. Yeah.
it's earth, fire, water, air. But then you have one person who's called the Avatar who can master all 4 of the elements, and they are also the bridge between the physical world and the spirit world. And
And speaking of
they've
that, there's a great episode when the Avatar is working directly with the chakras, and I think that was a great bridge for people who were interested in spirituality who found Avatar and were like, "Wow, they're talking about chakras. This is right up my alley. Like this is." I know that was my reaction. I watched it when I was a bit older. I didn't watch it back when I was younger, but I found it, and it was through this little YouTube video that talked about the chakras. So sorry to interrupt, but I just had to throw that in there that there is a
no,
direct link to the spirit
I'm
realm
I'm
there.
I'm glad you did. Yeah, I watched it when it came out um, as it aired, and I watched it many times since.
Yeah.
And but yeah, that episode is really cool, and it is like that was my first introduction to like chakras and Eastern philosophies,
Yeah.
and same thing with like meditation.
Hmm.
Between that and like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like I was
Oh
like, what
yeah.
is this meditation thing? You're setting by yourself? What? Like
Yeah, it's so cool, and
what?
so many kids were exposed to the Avatar going through these trainings, this progress of becoming the Avatar and like mastering each element. And when you spoke about this earlier about book one, book two, and book three, the first book I believe starts with water, right? Water is the
Yes.
first major theme, the first major element that the show deals with. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. And really quick,
Of course.
to finish the story, the setup is so you have this world, and something happened to the Avatar,
Mm,
and the Fire Nation decided to try to conquer the world,
mm,
and so now the one person that could like bring balance to this world is gone, and there's this 100-year war that's going on, and then in this small northern tribe that lives on the North Pole, there's brother and sister um, duo Katara and Sokka finds Aang, the last Airbender, the next incarnation of the Avatar, who's been frozen in ice for a
mm.
100 years, and they awaken him,
You're
and
right.
he finds out about the war, and he has to go through all this training to help try to stop it. But as far as book one being water, you also mentioned that the first element they do in the intro is earth.
Earth.
And the first element that happened to cover in the Book of the Five Rings is earth.
Okay.
Which I just made that connection.
Yeah.
There's really cool. This book reminds me a lot of that episode when Iroh is telling Zuko about trying to teach him about how to redirect lightning, and he draws in the sand, and he says he's learned from each of them. You have to use all the elements. The Book of the Five Rings reminds me a lot of that conversation that he had, because it's talking about if you're not familiar with that book, it's a book about samurai philosophy and martial arts, but it's broken down with the in the elements, which is really cool. It talks about fighting styles and
the famous
like
samurai in the Book of the Five Rings. It starts with an M, right? It's
yeah, I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's right there.
yeah, Miyamoto Musashi. I think I've I've definitely heard of that quite a bit. I never actually dove into it, but I'm happy you did, and I'm happy to hear that there are connections between Avatar and I'll quickly add this before you move forward is when they discovered the Avatar who was frozen. This reminds me of Captain America for some reason because they find this almost like ancient power in the ice, and it reminds me a lot of discoveries that could have been made that were frozen and stuck in time, waiting for the next generation to uncover them. And it's interesting because the Avatar, which I'm sure you're going to get into, links back to his ancestors. The Avatar has been reincarnated over and over again, and Aang just happens to be the next generation that is going to play this part in this war with the Fire Nation. Now, when you talk about the spiritual and the physical, the Fire Nation is waging war. They're a very war-oriented tribe or a nation. But what is their connection to the spirit realm, or would you say that they're cut off from the spirit realm, this Fire Nation?
I don't. So actually, if you wouldn't mind, I think I can dive into my notes here.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because
please feel free. Yeah.
The answer in that is definitely in my notes, and I kind of organize my notes to go in. It has this type of like chronological order in a way.
Let me preface this too. I was sort of asking almost to understand why the Fire Nation decided to wage war. Because, right now the world is experiencing this tension in a certain area in Europe. And we know that the Fire Nation, like we said earlier, is this, their nation is built upon industrialism and they have a lot of machinery, and it seems to be a common theme in the Fire Nation, but they're not evil. And I think it's important to make that distinction that fire is one of the four elements. It belongs in the collective, but they are going through a rough period of time. So I will let you get to your notes. I know you've got this kind of prepared a certain way. So yeah.
And if we go all over the place, that's
it's
fine.
Free flowing is my favorite.
It's definitely that's just a hard question to answer. And I think I'm glad that you brought up that they are not evil. They are part. There was a balance. Without fire, everything would be out of balance.
Absolutely.
But you see them. They do have in the culture a connection to the spirits. But if you see through, especially in book one, water, how they ignore it and that is very predominant when and of course, before we go on, I will say, spoiler alert,
Oh
if you
yeah, plenty
want
of
to know
spoilers ahead.
if you want to know nothing about the show before you go into it, maybe go watch it and then come back to this.
Yeah, come back
But I'm
later.
I'm not gonna be hiding
Sure.
any
You've been warned, everyone. You've been
points. Yeah, you've
warned.
been warned.
Spoilers ahead. Yeah.
But so in season one, the finale, they go to I think at the beginning I accidentally said Sokka and Katara are from the north. They're from the south,
Yeah.
and they travel to the north. So I got it flipped.
Right.
But so in the finale, they're in the north, which is like the pristine, like best version of like water tribe
Mm.
at one of the poles, because the southern tribe has been just rampaged by Fire Nation.
Mm-hmm.
They've hit really hard times. So now you're in like this very pristine, like very like still connected to everything, and like they have hardly been touched
I
by the
see.
Fire Nation because of how dangerous the ice is
Mm.
at the North Pole. But they get there, and Zhao, who is the general of the Fire Navy at this point, he learned about that yin and yang came into the physical realm as two koi fish, and they're in
Right.
this oasis pond, and they're swimming around each other. He wants to just destroy one of them, so the water tribe won't have the access to the power of the moon.
So the water tribe in this northern area, this North Pole, has these two koi fish, the yin and the yang, and they're swimming together. They're in this harmonious groove, and the Fire Nation is seeking to exploit that or take that power away from them. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes,
Hmm.
and even Iroh, who fought in the war, he goes to Zhao and he goes, "This isn't a good idea.
Hmm.
Everything is on a fine balance.
Right.
You don't. The Fire Nation needs the spirits, and the Yin and Yang needs the moon
Hmm.
just as much as the Water Tribe does.
Hmm.
Like it's, and, and he even warns him. He goes, whatever you unleash on that spirit, I'll release on you. Like either way,
Yeah.
like you're getting screwed. And so I think that's a perfect kind of short answer to your question.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
To mention that they do have connection to the spirits, but they're ignoring it at every turn
I see.
throughout the whole story.
Hmm.
And I think that ignoring the spiritual, like knowing it's there, but like just totally just like nope, like I'm not gonna look at it.
I
Like
see.
it's
Yeah, there's some kind of
and
denial there. Like that's kind of what we were talking about earlier. Like maybe the Fire Nation is very focused in the physical, the industrial, the technological realms, and they're not paying much attention to the spiritual side. It's kind of been pushed off, or it's being perceived as something like a resource that they could extract out of this northern water tribe.
yeah, and I'm glad that you're mentioning that how industrial they are.
Hmm.
Notice, yeah, they were kind of industrial on their own a little bit, but they didn't really get um, heavily industrial until they came into the Earth Kingdom,
Mm.
and they started. You notice it both the air and water nations. They basically just killed them. Like yours, like
Hmm.
nope. But
It was like
with
a
the
genocide.
yeah, the Earth, they imprison them. They get them to work, invent
Mm.
things, um, and that's how they get some of the resources to do that industrial. And that Earth is um, in the show you could see it as that harder feminine. So it's that
Right.
that that very hot, very wild, you could say, um, masculine, and it's trying to command and
Mm.
direct
Hmm.
this very grounded, very um, very grounded and rooted, very
Yeah.
determined earth feminine. And and that will also get me into my notes,
Sure.
which is awesome. And before we start, I would also like to say I know that the um, elements are both masculine and feminine at
Definitely.
times.
Definitely.
In this conversation, I'll just be going over what um, I see it's represented as in the show, and it's
Yeah.
very like the very like basic like fire masculine, earth feminine,
Yeah, there's a duality within
air
each element.
masculine.
There's these
Yeah,
manifestations on both ends of the spectrum, the masculine and the feminine for each element. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. So when I say fire masculine, I'm not saying there isn't a fire feminine. I'm just saying within the context of the show and when
Hmm.
I'm covering
Hmm.
it, that's how it's being represented as.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. Um, oh, I wanted to. I wrote here on top of my notes. Greg, who I mentioned I had worked with,
Hmm.
um, he had a small speaking role on The Legend of Korra,
No
and he's
way. Oh,
good
wow.
friends with Dante Bosco, who voices Zuko.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I
Okay.
have like this kind of distant connection to the
Yeah.
show, and I even
That's amazing.
have Dante Bosco's autobiography,
That's so cool.
From
Wow.
Rufio to Zuko,
Wow. Oh, he actually mentions Zuko in the book. That's so cool.
and
Wow.
and he even signed it. He said
Nice.
honor, and that's how he signed it.
Honor.
There's two editions. There was the Rufio edition that had a
Mm.
picture of Rufio on the cover, and then this one that has the picture of Zuko on it. Um,
I
yeah,
love
so I
that
have
he
a
wrote honor because it's a great way to encapsulate Zuko's character arc in one
yeah
word. It's honor.
honor,
Very
which is
cool.
really cool. Yeah, I had to get this book, and I I put it in my notes to mention it, not just to be like showboating, like, hey, I have a small connection to it,
That's
but
so, it's very unique. Yeah.
yeah, it is very unique. And with how important and influential the show has been to me,
Hmm. Hmm.
it's very synchronistic. But he has the fourth chapter in the book is called The Cult of Entertainment,
Mm.
and he talks about being unraveled in the Scientology cult.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah, and but from his perspective, he's a fairly younger guy when it comes to like Hollywood, you could say, especially back then around the time when that cult was really at the forefront of Hollywood. Some could say it still is, and there's definitely an argument for that. But like when it
Absolutely.
started to be known and everything back in the day, he was fairly young, and I think it wasn't like I don't want to say he's in the lower levels of the in crowd or anything.
Hmm.
I
He's
think he was
interacted
just
with them.
I think he was just a very naive,
Mm.
like very wide eyed, kind of like Aang. He's very wide eyed.
Yeah.
He's very hopeful. Like that. I think he just kind of from the way he writes about it,
Mm.
it sounds like he um just kind of fell into it, and
Yeah.
he realizes now, like, well, this is like really
Yeah. I'm
crazy.
sure just like Aang, he was in for a lot of rude awakenings and like revelations that were probably very intense for him.
Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting thing because I mean
Definitely.
that's
And it's cool to
with
add to your personal connection to this wonderful show, which I think out of everything that Nickelodeon has produced, like this show, like I think 9 out of 10 people will be like, "Oh my God, this show was a big influence on my childhood," and I'm so happy that
Yeah,
we've came
and
together to discuss it.
yeah, and to go off of that, it's with Hollywood, Pedalwood, whatever you want to call that
Mhm.
that area. It is very dark.
Mm,
You know, Hollywood, they got their name from the holly trees. That's the wood that the Druids would make their wands out of.
right.
So there's a lot of like secret, hidden hanging type of
The
stuff,
occult is
encoded.
all throughout Hollywood. Yeah, it's
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
But to be able to use their spell, they
Hmm.
need to use truth
Yes.
at some points. And I think Avatar, The Last Airbender, was just one of those things that happened at the right time.
Hmm.
The inspiration came to Mike and Brian, especially Mike. I've listened to interviews he's done about his inspiration when it came to him,
Mike
and
and
it's
Brian
very
being
like,
like the creators of the show, they're the producers.
the
Nice,
creators of the show is very like divine spark type of
nice.
flow state moment.
Hmm.
I think it was just the right, the lightning in the bottle type moment
Right.
where, and it came to them at the right time when Hollywood was like, we need something
Mm.
light
Yeah.
in our what we're putting out
Yeah.
to to counteract with the dark stuff, so
Yeah.
our dark stuff works better.
It's definitely light,
Um,
but it has so much depth, and I think that's why we all fell in love with it. It's this, it's a feel-good show, but it also can take young kids or adults like us who are understanding these metaphysical principles that can open us up to the spirit realm in a way that I think most cartoons on Nickelodeon aren't doing that. So it's definitely
oh,
has
for
its,
sure.
yeah.
Um, and also, notable that Michael Dante DiMartino, the co-creator of Avatar, also wrote the book Rebel Genius, which is one of my favorite fantasy novels. If you
Mm.
haven't read Rebel
It's
Genius,
Rebel Genius. Okay.
I would suggest reading it. I actually have Rachel of Weaving Spiders and I started a traveling book club where we mail books in a journal log
Nice.
um, to people in our group. And our first book is Rebel Genius, because I talk about it all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Because no one knows about it, but it's this
Hmm.
really cool book about it's kind of like Avatar. It's very similar type of setup, but it's this Italian, like ancient alternative history Italian
Mm.
world, but art is banned, and
All art is banned in this
all
fantasy realm.
art is banned because the magic system is sacred geometry, and the wands are like paintbrushes.
Hmm.
So, and they have familiars called geniuses, which is like,
Mm.
is like the visual embodiment of the artistic styles. And the reason why in the book, the reason why they have gargoyles is because the only person that's allowed to have a genius is the supreme empress, and she
Ah.
replaces all art with paintings of herself, their flag, which is like all these triangles within inside of each other that's like inverted. It's really crazy. And then statues of her genius, which
Mm.
is like this giant gnarly bird, which looks like a gargoyle. And
Oh,
so
okay.
like
Yeah.
that's how he like ties in like alternative history to it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and she will remove people's their genius has the tiny crystal in it, and that's like the creative spark. So
Mm.
there
Like the
she'll
third
separate
eye.
them from their familiar genius, which is the embodiment of the creativity, and then she'll forcefully remove the little jewel from their genius's head, which is imbued inside them. So it's like ripping
Yeah.
part of the body off. And she keeps it like in the cell. She has like this council of 10, and like there's a cult guy that's like doing like this alchemy to it. But it's really cool because there's this underground of rebel artists
Mm.
who are learning the ways of sacred geometry and they're trying to gather the three creators' tool, which are the tools that the creator used to create the universe, which are like this giant ruler and like a pencil, and it's like I forget what the third one is, but they're on this like this Indiana Jones type hunt to hunt down the Kratos tools before
Do you mean
thing.
Kratos, like Kratos as in the god?
Creators.
Oh,
I meant like
creator tools. Okay, so like one is
yeah,
a pencil, you have another a ruler, you said?
yeah,
Okay, this kind of reminds
and
me of like Masonic symbolism when you have like the compass and these tools being used for creative purposes, but they're being hoarded. And anyone who knows about the underground occult Hollywood magic, extracting substances for creative potential or for energetic usage, it all fits together. It's, I'm not going to say it directly, but yeah, it's very
yeah,
much similar to the dark side of Hollywood that we kind of talked about earlier.
yeah, and but when she removes these that creative spark from them, they turn into these beings called lost souls,
Oh,
and they're like
wow.
these like hollowed hush zombie like people that just walk around.
And that's what
It's
people
just
are kind of like when they lose that creative spark, they're no longer animated the same way. They're almost like disembodied.
yeah, that's why for me creating is so much. I love making art. like I don't know where I would be if I wasn't constantly creating something, even if
Yeah.
it's just for fun.
Hmm.
You know, like we spiders, we make memes of each other all the time, and just for fun. But like, yeah, it's that creation. I mean, life is creation. Like
Mm,
it's so it's part of being here. You need to be
absolutely.
creating, and
Absolutely.
so and it's a short young adult series.
Hmm.
Um, but it's very in vein of like Avatar. It's about this young kid. He joins this other group of young kids, and they're trying to like it's like
Yeah.
the spiritual successor of Avatar, and not that many people know about it. That
So once
that
again, that's Rebel Wisdom is
or
this.
Rebel Genius.
Rebel Genius. Okay, sorry about that. Rebel
Yeah,
Genius.
yeah, it's really cool. So um, I wanted to mention that because, um, like I said, not many people know about it.
Hmm.
I could definitely do a whole thing on symbolism of that series.
Sure, yeah.
But it
And by the way,
also,
just one last thing that Rebel this series was created by you said one of the co-creators of Avatar. He was
yeah,
connected to the show.
Michael Dante DiMartino.
Dante. Oh, okay, Michael Dante
Yeah,
DiMartino. You know
yeah,
why the name Dante stands out to me, but I won't get into that
because
now.
Dante's Inferno,
Dante's
and
Inferno, yeah.
yeah, and then Dante Bosco, which is the
Yeah.
actor who plays
Can't
Zuko.
get away from Dante no matter no matter
And
how hard
he's
I try,
the
yeah.
fire prince, and he becomes the fire lord
No way.
Inferno.
Okay, these are all signs. I'm taking these all as omens to just keep moving in this rabbit hole that I've dug myself into. But yeah, I'm so happy that we've started this conversation because just like Avatar, when young kids are watching Avatar or adults watching Avatar, let's say, like we talked about chakras earlier, there are so many of these mystical principles that will lead people to seek out other materials, other books, other television shows or documentaries or podcasts. And it's so cool that this show has inspired both of us, but it's wonderful to hear about your personal connection to the creators and things that I didn't imagine we would get into tonight that all relate to what Avatar is and what Avatar has done for the people who have watched it. So please continue.
Yeah,
This is fascinating.
yeah. So yeah. So now actually to get into the meat of it,
Sure.
that was all kind of my introduction. I wanted to kind of set up and to kind of tell people what about me and
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
backstory because I've always found like behind the scenes stuff interesting. Like
yeah.
even when I first got the Avatar DVDs, we
Hmm.
had bonus features of
Nice.
Sifu Kisu, which is the guy that blocked all the fighting.
Oh
They,
wow, okay.
they block the entire all the fighting. Like that's
Amazing animation, by the way. Like the choreography and the fight scenes, and like in general, the animation. Like you can look at like a show like South Park, which doesn't prioritize that style, but Avatar has a flow in movement that is so beautiful. It's very satisfying.
yeah. Um, yeah, but when I used to go and like pretend like I was a bender, because each bending style is based off of a different type of martial art,
Right.
and so I used to pretend like I was from one of the nations all the
Nice.
time. Um, yeah, so that's why I added some of that background story,
Yeah, I loved it. I loved
because
it.
I love that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But to get into the meat of this, I would like to start off with what Kaylee helped me out with. Like I mentioned, she helped me out with looking at the birth chart of the release date.
Mm.
And this is something that she's been doing in our movie groups. She will look up the release date because she's an amazing astrologer, and she will look up the release date for the movies you're about to watch, and we'll find out all this cool stuff that correlates to like the story and the symbolism that
Mm.
is in what we're about to watch. So I was like, that would be really fun to do for this interview. So I went to go do it, and I had just mentioned it in the universe Telegram group,
Mm.
and I was like, I won't go into it too much because like I'm a novice at reading charts. I'm not very as familiar as Kaylee. She was like, post it to the group. I'll help you out.
I
And
love
so we
that.
had this amazing conversation. So I do have more than what I planned on because she helped me out with a lot of this.
Awesome. And by the way,
Um,
you have an interview with Kaylee. Is it on her YouTube channel? Can you let us know? Or was this
uh, I do not have any interview with
I
Kaylee.
see. What is Kaylee's YouTube channel for everyone if they want to see what she's been doing with the astrological charts?
I think I think it's just her name.
Okay.
I don't remember her last
We can
name.
post everyone in the show notes later. I just wanted to give people that if they
Yeah.
want to learn more.
If you want to look Kaylee up, search Universe Podcast Kaylee,
Yeah.
um, and then she'll be on one of them. And Chance should have it in his show notes as well,
Yeah.
links to all her stuff.
She's on there all the
Um,
time. Yeah, you can
yeah,
find her.
she's doing one tonight. I think. I think
Yep.
they're
Yep.
doing a live stream tonight,
And
which is awesome.
Juan on Juan podcast. Shout out to you, Juan. Love what you've been doing. Love the Abraxas comics you've been putting out.
Yeah, I just um, before we went on, I started the Tomb Raider one, which I
Nice.
watched
Yeah,
Tomb
yeah.
Raider with Gabe
Okay.
and Rachel. So like I kind of knew like since like I was there when they were all watching it, like what they were going to talk about.
Was this through the Telegram movie group that you guys were doing? Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So I kind of knew what it was about, what I was going to kind
Hmm.
of talk about, but I still wanted to watch it. So shout out to them. That was
Yeah.
I haven't finished it, but I can already tell you that all of it's gold.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
what I've heard so far is amazing. Yeah. So Avatar the Last Airbender aired on February 21st, 2005.
Mm.
And and from my first initial looking at it, it shows the signs of a very strong leader because Mercury is in Pisces, Jupiter is in Libra, Saturn is in Cancer, and the moon's in Leo. Those are the ones that stuck out to me. All about different aspects of being like I said, a strong leader, which made me think of what Aang turns into and
Yeah.
what he um, the the way he grows as a character.
Mm.
Um, and then Gemini is on the ascent, and Kaylee helped me out. This is something that she helped me out with. Mercury represents the main character, which is interesting because there's a lot of Mercury symbolism in the Legend of Korra. Like I said, I won't
Mm,
go into it, but I would just kind of tease people what I could talk about. But Korra, there's definitely a lot of Mercury symbolism throughout the whole show.
mm.
um, but yeah, she pointed out that Mercury does represent the main character, even in The Last Airbender. And Grand Air is trying with the scent, which plays into like the Last Airbender
Yeah, right, right.
type of
It's the
naming.
final. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also a small. She a lot of this section is what she helped me out of. So again, shout out to Kaylee. Um, but it's about a small boy, Gemini, Mercury, small. Gemini is a dual sign. So he he meets his whole team.
Mm.
Um, and you have the brother sister team of Sokka, Katara, and the first people he meet. They're both part of the Water Tribe.
He
So
doesn't really
he
have
has
much
the
of a family in the beginning, and then this community integrates and becomes his family because he's kind of like on his own in the beginning, right?
yeah, um, very much so. In which that whole like creating your own family is
Yeah.
definitely very strong um, in the show. And but like I said, Sokka and Katara, they're very like them meeting Aang is very Gemini.
Mm. So you got a brother and sister, and they're perfect representation of that duality, that twin manifestation that Aang
Yeah,
interacts with throughout his whole journey. These
and
brother and
Sokka
sister.
wants nothing to do with bending. He's a
Mm,
non-bender. He's just
mm.
like, I'm just a guy with a boomerang. I don't want all this flying
Yep, he's
and
like a muggle.
magic.
He's like, I'm not
Yeah.
doing any of that Harry Potter stuff. I'm gonna live my muggle life. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually for a while there, I had the whole Sokka cut,
Nice, nice.
like the man bun
The
and
kind of
everything. Like
yeah, yeah.
yeah, like I did that for a while. And yeah, it was I had multiple different haircuts that kind of reflect different characters throughout the both
Oh,
series.
I've been
And I
there.
have this collage of me next to them. It's really
Oh,
fun.
cool. Wow, yeah. It's kind of like a cosplay sort of
Yeah.
situation. Yeah.
But Gemini is or yeah, sorry, I talked about the Gemini. Mer Mercury in Pisces, which really reflects about like he's a monk. So it
Mm,
has like that whole like free flowing, very open, spiritual type of like
yeah.
everything we associate with being a monk.
And it's funny that you bring that up because like there are many times when Aang struggles with authority and like keep in mind like he's probably what like a 10-year-old boy and it's hard for him to accept the discipline that it would take for this monk training that he must go through to become the Avatar, right? It's
Yeah, and that's something I also struggled with, which I think it's interesting. Like I said, looking back on the show and how connected to it and how much it spoke to me.
yeah.
But I from a very young age, especially when that authority figure came from a male, I had a very struggle with trying to work with that.
Mm.
Um, so um, the next part is Pluto, um, Sagittarius on the descent, and that's all about Aang transforms the relationships. Like he meets all his future um, teachers
Yeah.
like Tara, Toph,
Mm.
Zuko, like,
They're all
and they,
mentors in some special way for him. Yeah.
yeah, and he literally is transformed by meeting them,
Yeah.
by learning that their respective native bending styles.
Mm.
Um, and then that also kind of reflects his shadow and power externally, facing belief systems different from your own and learning
Mm.
to listen more
Yeah,
and
Aang is
changing your ways of the way you view things,
Mm.
which is definitely with what Aang has to go through.
Yeah, there's certainly times where he's not listening too well, and he's very rebellious, and gets himself into trouble, and always learns his lesson. In that kind of ironic, like children's TV show way, but still, it's he's playing out archetypes or stories that we can all relate to, and they're all part of his training. Like each mistake is part of his training, or each
Yeah, and
adventure.
yeah, and he even, at the end, there's a lot of criticisms with in the fandom that people like, oh, they had to, ex machina the whole energy bending thing that the Lion Torador teaches him
Hmm.
at the ending, because he can't kill. You should have just killed him. And it's like, no, even this right here shows you that he had, because he was struggling with like, do I have to like kill him, or can I figure another solution out? He had
Mm.
to try to think of things differently and change his viewpoints. Even Yang Chen, when he seeks counsel from her, says you can't fully be a air nomad if you're Avatar, because you're not just a person of the Air Nation. You're a person of the world. You're a person of
Mm.
the spirits. You can't just go by
He
that.
doesn't really
So
belong to that air tribe in the same way that like another airbender would. He's like in a very unique situation being the avatar. It's very challenging for him, right?
yeah. So when I saw things like this, I go, yeah, it is a kid show, so they can't do certain things. But I think it's purposeful, and it happened the way it should have in the show. I don't agree with the mainstream
Yeah.
fandom when it comes to that. I think it's the way they handle it, and I'll get into it later. But there's so much symbolism on how it ends.
Mm.
Like there's so much there to look at, and I love it.
And a
Um,
sneak peek in the ending, and we can dive into this later if you want. I mean, I know we are almost at the 2 hour mark here, but I do want to bring up the Avatar state because this is unique in the fact that Aang wields the power of earth, water, air, and fire. But what is the Avatar state, and how does this kind of represent his overall character arc that he has to develop into?
yes. Um, the Avatar state is when he goes inward and seeks counsel from his past lives.
His
So
ancestors,
it's
right?
kind of, yeah, it's kind of like a regression,
Mm.
but it's also like he's um, getting access to the Akashic,
Akashic
and there
records,
is,
yeah.
yeah, there is really cool Akashic symbolism in um, Lo Shao's library, the buried library they visit. Um,
'Cause Lo
yeah,
Shao was the previous Avatar right
uh,
before Aang, or was this
Lo
someone else?
Shao was the owl spirit, the one that owned
Yes,
the
okay.
library. Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me.
Uh, yes. There's more symbolism in the um, birth chart for the series, but I'll skip over the rest of it since we are running pretty long
Which
here.
is great, by the way. We're in no particular rush. But yeah.
Yeah. So I'll skip over the rest. But I would highly suggest, if you're into something like that, to definitely look at the release dates,
Mm.
and looking at the birth charts.
Yeah, I want to
It's
go back
definitely
and look at the Lord of the like Star Wars or Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, like these big movies that had a big impact on culture, and kind of look at, because there's always like the release date is on purpose, right? Like these dates, it's almost like when astrologers are planning out weddings. They're gonna plan it out, they're gonna chart it out and release it, or have this ritual on a particular day. And it's so cool that you broke down a couple of the archetypal figures in the planets and these themes and struggles that come up in the show that relate to its release date. It's really cool. Never thought about
Yeah,
shows like that before.
yeah, it's really cool. I know, I don't know why I never put two and two together. Like
Hmm.
that's, I'm like, of course, why wouldn't I look at that? As soon as Kaylee started doing it, I'm like, wow, this is awesome. And the way she explains it too is so good.
Mm.
I love everyone in the group, and I really, um I'm so honored, pun very intended, to know people like Kaylee and be
Yeah.
inspired to look at things differently, like I just said. So that was an excellent place to stop.
That's what's
The
great about
the
Weaving Spiders Welcome. Yeah, they will definitely inspire you to think differently, to see differently, and it's a great
Yes.
experience.
Um, and to kind of bridge that into the next part of our conversation, I wanted to talk about how you can look at, in each individual character,
Hmm.
as a sign. For
Yes.
instance, Katara is very Cancerian. She's a
Right.
very like a Cancer archetype. She,
Hmm.
as we mentioned, she's kind of the mother to not just the group and Sokka, but her whole tribe
Hmm.
when we first meet her. You know, and Sokka even says when he closes his eyes and visions their mother, he can't help but see Katara's face
Right.
because it's been so long since he's seen their mother.
And she's been forced to
Uh,
step in and fulfill that role, and it happens to also be the maternal figure for Aang as well, the maternal figure in the entire show, essentially.
yeah,
Especially when we see her as an older woman later, but we'll get to that later. That
yeah,
gave me chills
and
thinking about that, seeing her
and
all grown up.
she also goes to the shadow side of Cancer when
Yes.
she goes to go protect people that she likes.
Hmm.
She does, you know, release her shadow
Yeah.
in different parts, and so that's, that's very interesting to see as well.
Mm.
Um, and I think this is to kind of weave this in here really quick. One of the coolest movies to see the shadow side of Cancer, the
Hmm.
smother mother, I guess you could call it,
Hmm.
is Coraline.
Oh, okay. Neil
Because
Gaiman, right?
the other mother,
Mm.
the stop motion movie, the other mother, that's that's the most toxic side of Cancer
Mm.
I've ever seen.
Does
That's
this
an
relate
embod
to the Disney princess archetype who has like the stepmother who is kind of like locking them inside and they can't really go anywhere? They can't go out and mature. They're like stuck in this domestic role.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Only asking because
yeah,
I've never seen C- Coraline, but I'm familiar with the author Neil Gaiman who wrote American Gods and these other great books. But just want to put
yeah.
that out there.
Coraline is. I saw that in theaters when it came out.
Mhm.
As a kid, my mom took me and my sister to it. I had no idea what it was going to be, and then I watched it. I was like, "Oh,
The
it's
animation
pretty."
too looks really cool. It's like very trippy. It's
Yeah,
pretty spooky.
it's definitely, if you want to see like the toxic side of Cancer, that
Hmm.
shadow side, the smother mother, the other mother in character in that movie, that entity is a very good symbolism of symbol of that. Um,
When we're thinking about
eh,
each character as the sign, so like we're starting with Katara as the Cancerian energy, and like each of these characters kind of integrate that shadow side throughout the plot, right? Like by the end, Katara is transformed. All the characters are transformed, but like
yeah, the all
particularly
much more whole
their whole, yeah,
people. Yeah, for
integrated that
sure.
shadow.
Yeah. But like we mentioned at the later earlier in the conversation, the main setup of the series is that like that fire masculine like overtaking that air masculine, trying to
Mm,
overtake the rest as well. But the first one it goes to get rid of,
it's
because it
Earth.
knows it can stop it. That's what
Mm,
the avatar is going to be born in the reincarnation cycle it goes through. The next one is going to be born in the air, so it snuffs out of the air. Which,
mm,
think about how fire works. When you light a flame, the first element it interacts with is with air, and it does that alchemical process of changing the air in
mm.
it. Um, so that it's interesting that that's the first one it
Yeah.
goes to
And they depend
annihilate.
on each other. If you take out air, the fire will be extinguished, and vice versa. It's
Yeah,
fascinating.
and and Aang at the end, he I had this earlier later in my notes, but I can bring it up now. Later at the end, Aang is his final outfit when he goes to go fight, which is what I use in the picture as his final outfit.
Mm,
It's actually his airplane uniform that he wore the earlier in the series
mm.
that's been destroyed and burnt. He reuses it for his sash,
Oh,
but the
yes.
pants are the fire part of the Fire Nation outfit he's been hiding out in. So
Mm,
it's that fire and the air both house the masculine in his outfit. So it's showing you that he's now that whole
yeah.
masculine, and that's when um, the um, the Fire Lord realizes that. Like, he jokes it off as like, "Oh, you're just a boy," but it's like
Mm,
he is much more of a whole masculine than the Fire Lord is. He is out of balance, and that's one of
mm,
the reasons why he loses.
mm-hmm.
Um,
And it's
but
cool
yeah,
that his
Aang,
his clothing is representing or it's reflecting that he's integrated all these elements, and it's like he's reached his final form. He's matured spiritually now, and he's showing this on the outside by his change in appearance.
yes, I love it.
Mm.
That's something that I really just in the last like year or so, I rewatched it, and I put that together, and I was like, wow.
Nice.
Every time I watch it, I see something a little bit deeper, which is really cool.
Mm.
Yeah, Aang, his arrows, if you know, it points out, of course, for of his hands and feet,
Mm.
to connect him with the earth and the energy around him to go in and out. But the one on his head isn't pointing up for like the Gnostic ascension. It's
Mm.
pointing down to himself.
Yeah.
It's pointing inward to itself,
Hmm.
which is really cool.
Definitely.
Um, and going to add to when you talk about how Aang kind of has that childlike wonder and he
Yeah.
likes to rebel and everything.
Hmm.
Early in the series, Sokka goes, "You can't fight the Fire Nation with fun." And goes, "You should try it sometime."
Should try it
If you
sometime.
notice, every time he fights, except for like the last battle when he's more serious, he's like, "This
Hmm.
has to be done." But throughout the majority of the series, he's laughing.
Yeah,
He's
something
just
whimsical about it.
yeah, he's goofing off. He's just having fun with
Yeah.
messing around with um with whoever he's fighting against,
Yeah.
especially Zuko early on.
That kind of reminds me of like a trickster element of Aang's character. Like, he's defeating these enemies and he's kind of like Batman. Like, he's trying not to kill them. He's got like this moral code that he follows very strictly. But he does it in such a way that it's like kind of to mess with them and to teach them lessons. It's like Aang is revealing the shadow of his enemies without destroying them completely, which is really
Yeah,
fascinating.
well, the martial art, I forget the name, starts with the B, that air bending is based off of.
Mm.
It's all about redirecting your opponent's energy,
Yeah, I know
and
judo is a
which
lot like that. Like you would use their momentum and redirect it in the opposite direction, or yeah,
Yeah,
going with the
which
flow.
goes in, which is talked about in the Book of the Five Rings as working with the light, I
Mm,
think it's called, which is interesting because it's actually in it's kind of, it sounds very airy, but it's in the fire part,
mm,
with light and air working together, which is very interesting again. And light, of course, fire is light, that eternal flame. Um, but that's one of the reasons why it reminds me of, like I said, Iroh's speech that he gives Zuko. But yeah, they're, let me see, scrolling down. Yeah, fire is the the only bending you don't need the element at hand um, with you. They use their inner chi,
right. Like a
or as they
waterbender
refer.
has to have a source of water near them, or like an earthbender if they're not in a place where there's like earthly material, dirt, stone, rock, they're not able to use their power. But the firebenders have that power within at all times, which makes them extra dangerous, but also very, very inspiring or independent in some special
Yeah,
way.
and they refer to it as breath a lot, your inner chi, your breath, which is
Yes,
very
yeah,
interesting. Anytime you see Zuko get angry at the beginning, because he's a very angsty person at the
yes,
beginning of the
yeah,
show, anytime he gets angry, you notice like he will like shoot out little puffs of fire out of his
yep,
hands, or
yep,
his breath go,
yeah.
just you have like this
Let me
spark
ask
of
you really
flame.
quick. Zuko is Zuko our Aries archetype in this series?
Yeah, you can definitely classify Zuko as an Aries archetype for sure. Um,
Do you want to get into Toph at all? We haven't really talked about her much, and I think
y-
she
y-
plays an incredible role, especially an inspiring role as someone. If you guys haven't seen the show, Toph is blind, but yet her, this setback, this visual setback, becomes her superpower and her strength, and she's a very formidable earthbender, and she teaches Aang a lot. But the fact that she's blind never really gets in her, like, it doesn't interfere with her power, which I find very fascinating. It becomes like her superpower almost.
yes, which this was actually a request.
Mm.
So I'm glad you brought it up. I asked Rachel, are we using spiders? I was like, hey, I've talked to her about the show before. I was it's like, is there anything that you want me to hit on?
Mm.
And she was like, mention the earth and the earth feminine, or that a little bit more, because I was heavily focusing on the masculine and
Mm.
all that. So definitely this is needs to be talked about for sure. But Toph, she, I'm glad you mentioned that she is blind, and not only is that cool to see represented
Hmm. Yeah,
in
yeah.
a show, and it's like not a virtuous representation where
No.
in a lot of Hollywood, they're just like, oh, we have this person that
Right. She's not
is
like
part of this
the
group.
token blind person who is like, oh, here's our representation of people with disabilities. Like, here's tough. It's like, no, she's so much more than that.
Yeah, she's and it also plays into older archetype of the blind seer,
Yes.
the blind
Prophet.
prophet, the blind mentor, all that,
Mhm.
that whole type of
There's
thing.
something shamanistic about that too. Like their physical vision is not functioning properly, but their spiritual vision or their connection to that earthly energy is very potent. And that's, I think, a lot of what Aang learns from her is getting in tune with those frequencies of the earth, like the Schumann resonance almost.
Exactly, because that's what she listens to.
Yeah.
She listens to the vibrations of the earth. That's what the badger moles, that's what they
Yeah.
taught her.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and I like how they show it with the sonic waves. It's really cool. But it's interesting that you say the word shamanic when you're um, talking about Toph because I recently rewatched Avatar with some of my friends, and when we got to the swamp episode, which is when Aang sees a vision of Toph in the swamp,
Right.
and it's the swamp communicating to him
Hmm.
that this is the person you need to meet to start your earthbending training.
Hmm.
Um, and the swamp pulls them in literally.
Hmm.
The swamp's kind of alive. They see visions. They drink. They meet swamp people. They eat and drink weird things. They go on. And my friend pointed out because she had been on shamanic journeys of her own. She's done ceremonies and things. She goes, "This is literally a shamanic ceremony. They're
Yeah.
they're
Yeah. Yeah.
being like indoctrinated into this
Yeah.
in this
She
thing."
kind of reminds me of Yoda, because like Yoda lives in the swamp, and like Anakin has to
Yeah,
seek out Yoda, and this like quality of the earthly energy. So like in the Star Wars universe, it's like Dagobah, and it's like it envelops Luke. Sorry, I didn't mean to say Anakin. Luke gets like sucked into the swamp almost, and it's like consuming him. But it's not. It's like nourishing him at the same time, and that's kind of what Toph has to offer Aang as
yeah.
well as he's seeking her out.
And it's funny you mentioned that because the swamp, if you remember, it's just one tree.
Hmm.
It's not like it's this. It's multifaceted organism.
Right.
It's literally just this one tree that's just outgrown and created its
Yeah.
own like otherworldly surrounding.
Hmm.
And to briefly mention the Legend of Korra, Toph, when she's older, goes to the swamp, and when Korra goes to and seeks out Toph, um, Toph goes, um, tells Korra when she asks, like, "Don't you miss everyone? You're disconnected from the outside world." And Toph's like, "I can see everything
Hmm.
through the tree because she can connect with the tree
Yeah.
just like Avatar
She's
kind of
still
can."
rooted in that
Yeah.
network. It's like that mycelial network.
Yeah, that episode in Korra always reminds me of Yoda too.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you
Yeah.
mentioned that because she's like this little old swamp lady that's just
Right.
like
Yeah,
shriveled
exactly. She's
up.
kind of like hunched over. I mean, honestly,
Yeah,
like the older version, so like in Legend of Korra, when we meet Katara and Toph in their old age, I just gotta say it, they're so badass. Like they grew up to be these old wise mentors who are bringing in this next generation of benders and heroes. And yeah, it's like they're serving their purpose in the cycle of the hero's journey. They've kind of completed their cycle, and now they're holding the door open for the next heroes in the next saga.
yeah.
So,
In that swamp, when Toph is older in that swamp, she's the hermit now,
mhm,
and the tarot is just the hero's journey. And
right.
I swear they need to teach at least the major arcana
Yeah.
in English
I
class
mean, I'm an
because
English
that's
teacher. I would love to go through like, all right, here's the Fool. We can talk about all the characters associated with each one and take the students through that journey to the world card. That would be awesome. I love that
yeah.
idea.
Yeah, if you haven't dove deep into Michael Tessarion, I would suggest his Path of the Fool. It's a video series and a book. I have took a lot of notes on it when I was writing my book. It's
Awesome.
so helpful. Yeah, Michael Tessarion, Path of the Fool, definitely. Um, but yeah, see, the blind seer, to finish that up.
Hmm.
There's also it actually goes back in mythology to Odin,
Yes.
who plucked out his eye to
Yep.
gain
To
knowledge.
gain knowledge.
And yeah, I love Toph. She's a very strong like Earth feminine character.
Hmm.
Um,
I happen to be an Earth sign. I'm a Taurus, and it's like Toph is always. I've always kind of related to her, and just the fact that, people say about an Earth sign, particularly a Taurus, that she's so stubborn, and it's like no one can move her. She is that mountain, and like, that causes conflict, but at the same time, she provides this comical relief too that is necessary in the show to keep it whimsical. that like no
Yeah,
one really messes with Toph. Like even though she seems vulnerable due to her lack of eyesight, it's still like she is such a great role model for kids, I think.
yeah. And when she sleeps, you notice she puts her feet up because those are her eyes. Her lifting her feet
Yeah,
off the ground
yeah,
is like her closing
yeah.
her eyes.
I
I
forgot
love
about
that.
that. Yeah.
It's such a cool little touch that the
Yep.
animators made sure to do.
Reminds me to
Um,
ground myself. I mean, I haven't been barefoot in a while. It's pretty cold up here in Connecticut, but it's getting warmer, and having
yeah,
your bare feet on the ground is no better connection than that, I would
yeah.
say.
Nothing but naked, raw, bare feet. We had a
Yeah.
um, hashtag trending thing going on in the Weaving Spiders throughout the winter where we would go ground in snow,
Oh,
see how long we
nice.
could last. Um,
Okay. It's like a nice challenge, like a
yeah.
hashtag frostbite.
But yeah, since we were talking about um, Earth and Toph,
Hmm.
um, I had this interesting experience when I was at Lindsay's one day of brightness, and Phoenix was talking about alchemy, and he was talking about he was showing us how to sign and how he
Hmm.
uses signs to do spells,
Okay.
and he uses them in the pentagram, and he was showing us that when you are working with the elements, they can all work with each other,
Hmm.
but to keep in mind that the ones that are across from each other in the pentagram, like earth and air is, to work together, they have to work through another element.
Okay. So
So
those
his
other,
example,
yeah, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
so his example was if air wants to, or yeah, if air wants to work with earth, it has to go through like water. And that clicked in my
Hmm.
mind instantly about Avatar because when Aang first tries to learn earthbending from Toph,
He
he
struggles
can't move
so
a
much.
single rock.
Yeah, yeah.
And they both get frustrated, right?
So frustrated. Yeah.
And then Katara walks up the water, walks up to
Hmm.
top the earth, and goes, Aang learns like this. Have you tried this?
Hmm.
And Toph doesn't fully listen to Katara. She but she does incorporate what Katara suggested
Hmm.
um, into her next teaching plan.
Yeah.
And as soon as she incorporates what Katara suggested to Toph, um, and moves that rock right away.
Hmm.
And Katara, and he goes, "Did you try whatever it was?" And Toph goes, "Yeah, it worked wonders."
That's so
So
cool. Yeah.
air couldn't work with earth until water came into the equation.
So
So
there's
that's a very
this
chemical process.
very alchemical, absolutely. Like I know earlier we were talking about being a bridge, like the Avatar being a bridge between the physical and the spiritual, but within the elemental system itself, it's like, yeah, air and earth can oppose each other. They need some kind of facilitator. They need a channel to bridge the two together. Otherwise, they can't interact so fluidly, ironically, to use that term. Like
Yeah,
they need some kind of mediation between them so they can interact in a constructive way. It's very, very interesting.
yeah. Um, and it's also interesting that Aang connects with um, a water tribe, what
Hmm.
air, that flowy masculine connects with that flowy feminine
Hmm.
right away. That's
Hmm.
their first interaction. Um, but to kind of start wrapping things up, I
Hmm.
guess the what I really wanted to talk about was the Zuko character.
Yeah.
So and like I mentioned to you, um, growing up when I first watched it, Zuko, I really related to Zuko a lot in many ways. And um, first off, Zuko's father, Fire Lord
Hmm.
Ozai, um, he um, has plans to stop the 100-Year War his grandfather Sozin started with a comet that they call Sozin's Comet.
Right.
Cause just like waterbenders are most powerful during a full moon because it goes through
Right.
the phases of the moon. Their power wanes and
Yep.
waxes just like the moon. Earth benders not only gets it from their inner chi, but it coordinates with the sun. And when the comet comes by, it's like that extra boost. It's like
Yeah, this
it's
fiery
like a
comet.
second sun
Yeah.
almost.
It's
And so
amplifying that solar energy or that fiery energy that they have
yeah,
within.
so Sozin when he used it to do a simultaneous strike on all the Earth temple or
Yeah.
other air temples,
Air temples, yeah.
and did that mass genocide, and so that's why they call it Sozin's Comet. And then Zuko's dad, the Fire Lord of the main series, who to loop this back around to Star Wars, is played by Mark Hamill.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, and the Zuko from Rufio to Zuko book, he talks about meeting Mark Hamill in it, which is really cool.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be
Um,
awesome.
but his plan is when Chosen Comet is coming back around, he wants to harness it to do a final assault and scorch the whole earth in flames to become the Phoenix King of the earth.
Yeah.
And he wants to like use his ancestral trauma, which is what that comet represents. Is that it's like ancestral trauma. He wants to
Yeah.
harness that and just cover the whole earth in that trauma. He wants to just
Yeah.
burn it all down, right?
Yeah.
And Zuko, who is related to the past Avatar Roku from his mother's side. That's represented to like the good, the light side of Zuko, and you
Yeah.
have the dark side, which is put by his father, who's
Right.
started the war and all that.
He's got these two
And
influences pulling him in two different directions the whole entire show.
yeah, and we haven't even mentioned Zuko's father scars Zuko.
Yeah,
That's
he's
why he
always got the
has
scar the whole series. Yeah.
the scar. And it's because um, he called his dad out on sending a bunch of the young troops as diversions, so the older troops could kill the people that they wanted to fight with. And he said those people are serving in the army because they love the Fire Nation. They love our nation. They love our culture, and then you're just sending them off to die. And it's
Yeah.
like fresh new meat, blah blah blah. But then he takes it as a
A threat.
insult, a
Yeah.
threat, because it's that next generation, the son that could replace the father, just like how he
Yeah.
replaced his.
It's very
And
Saturnian too, because like Kronos will devour his children because he's aware that one day they're gonna step in and take his place. So he's like, I gotta. Well, I mean, this scar too is like very psychologically damaging because Zuko is showing maturity and independence and leadership, all great qualities, but the fact that it's negatively reinforced by his father and he has this reminder on his physical body every day of this damage that was done, that was inflicted on him, and it
because he
may, yeah,
cared,
yeah,
for his fellow man.
mm-hmm,
That's what it comes down to. He was like, these are human people too.
yeah, he was showing
You know,
morality, yeah,
yeah. And to the Fire Lord, that was a sign of weakness. So you're right, it's very Kronos, that's
mm-hmm,
very Saturnian. That's exactly right.
mm-hmm,
And that so throughout, like we mentioned, throughout the whole series, Zuko is like fighting this like internal battle.
yeah,
And luckily he has like that positive fatherly role model of Iroh. And which I love.
Gotta
I
love the
love
Iroh
Iroh.
memes. There's so many good Iroh memes. Like if you've
So
never
many good
seen the
Iroh.
show, just type in Iroh. I think that's how you spell his name. You'll
Yeah,
find like witty sayings, and Iroh is the one of my favorite characters of the show.
yeah, yeah, amazing. And one of his best quotes was my yearbook quote, which is how we connected, because you had followed me on Instagram, and I recognized your name from the We With Spiders group
Yeah.
and the universe group. But I was like, I recognize that name. I know he's part of the group. I don't know him, but I'm just gonna follow him because I was like, people in here are cool, and I saw you post that one day, and then I sent you that message, and we started talking.
Awesome.
So
That was my intention of creating that Local Listens Instagram page, was just to connect with all my favorite podcasters. Like I had found Chance and Interverse and Vibrant through Mark at My Family Thinks I'm Crazy. But to go back, and I'm glad that stuck out to you. It means a lot, and I'm happy that we were connected through the interwebs. I never expected to meet so many cool people, especially, and we keep coming back to this, the Weaving Spiders welcome group. But what you said
yeah,
earlier, I really want to just ask you, your yearbook quote. So like I chose a quote from the Buddha. It was doubt everything, find your own light. And I chose that because I was kind of like my senior year of high school, I started to dabble in like psychedelia, and like I was starting to unlock a couple things in my own consciousness that were hidden in darkness before. So that's why I chose that quote. But would you tell us a little more about this quote from Iroh that you used in your yearbook? It's really special.
yeah. I can't. I'm paraphrasing this because I can't
Sure,
remember
sure.
the full thing off the top of my head. He says something like, he tells it to Zuko, and it's
Hmm.
in book 2 of the second season. He goes, "It's time for you to ask yourself the big questions: Who are
Yeah,
you, and what do you want?"
nice.
And that was at the apex of what I'm about to talk about as well. So it's a very apropos part of the conversation to talk about
Awesome.
this. I put that in my yearbook quote mainly because I wanted Last Airbender quote, and at the time, it was just like goofy kid. So it wasn't like back in the cultural zeitgeist as it
Yeah.
is today, because it's on Netflix, and
Hmm.
you can get a bunch of
But it
merchandise.
was
It
kind of
wasn't,
like on the fringe back then when you were in high
yeah,
school. It was, yeah.
yeah. So like I put it out there, and apparently it was a bit too long because they like cut like the last
Yeah.
like little part of it, and
Yeah.
so out, which is whatever. But I did it because I felt like it was a good quote to go
Hmm.
out on a senior year, because I was graduating high school,
Yeah.
and I had started college early. Our local college had this deal with the surrounding high schools, um, where you could go part day and not have to go to high school, and your college class would um, be counted as high school and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
college credit. And I knew I wanted to do film from an early age.
Awesome.
So I was like, I wanted to do the film industry, and a lot of my projects throughout my um, college career in the media program all had little hints at The Last
Yep.
Airbender.
Yep.
I always like
That's how much
put
of
a
an
little
influence it
something in.
was. And yeah, and no,
Yeah,
back to what you said earlier, like when you're graduating high school at that point, yeah, it is time to ask those big questions. You're being released from a system, habitual ritual that we would go through every day. I mean, like when I go to work as a teacher, it's like there are these rituals and we're aligned to this like circadian rhythm of school. And when that's over, when that structure ends, then it's time to ask yourself, okay, what's next? Like, who am I? Where am I going? So with
yeah.
that being said, let's get into Zuko and his his progression. This is fascinating.
Yeah. So, yeah. So he has the eternal battle, and his the way they write his character. There was that amazing episode called Zuko Alone, which is
Mm,
one of the most interesting episodes of the series, because it's the only episode that doesn't have anger or any of the other
yeah,
the core
it's a
characters.
character study.
Yeah, it's like this old western where Zuko hardly speaks, and it's just him
Mm,
traveling, and it
yeah,
just shows but you can tell what's going on in his head
Hmm.
just by the way he holds himself.
It's like a non-verbal, like you can kind of like go through these emotions with him, even though he's not like explaining what's happening, but you can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can just you can feel throughout the whole episode. You can feel that internal struggle,
Hmm.
you know. And but he is a really good representation on integrating shadow. Um, and and one of the really coolest scenes for this is when he's in that whole fever,
Hmm.
um and he's like sick, and he's like laying in bed. It's not because he's has the flu or anything. It's because he's trying to integrate
Yeah.
everything. He's going through a metamorphosis, as Iroh tells him. And that's him integrating the shadow.
Hmm.
And a had two paths to take, and he chose he at that at the end of season 2, he chooses um the opposite path, to reject everything,
Hmm.
because he thinks that because he's banished from the Fire Nation, and it's he was told that if he can um, find the Avatar, he can return home and not be banished and be accepted back into his family lineage and all that, and get
Hmm.
everything he ever wanted,
Yeah. It's
except
like
the
his birthright. Yeah.
father. Yeah, his birthright. And um, so at the end of season 2, he's gone through this sweating metamorphosis, and he's about to choose the side of good,
Mm.
and help Aang. But then his sister Azula, which is literally named after um, her great grandfather, I think it was, Fire Lord Azulon. And so
Ah.
it's again that family of trauma,
Yeah.
and their dad put Azula and Zuko against each other
Hmm.
multiple times. You can see in flashbacks,
Hmm.
and um, he was like grooming her. He was basically into like programming her to be um, like this next evolution of like whatever it is you want to call that they've been passing down
Yeah. Yeah.
to fuel this 100-year war,
Right.
right? And so it's crazy to think about. And but yeah, so um, she comes here, and she lies to Zuko and tells him um, that you can still get everything you want. Just help me destroy the Avatar,
Hmm.
betray your uncle that's taken you in
Hmm.
and has been this positive father masculine figure in your life, and you can get everything and everything will be fixed just like you've
Hmm.
always hoped for. And so he falls for it, and he rejects the path
Yeah.
that the good
This
path he's been
is
going on.
a lot like when, like the story of Jesus when he's wandering in the desert and like, by the way, just before I talk about Jesus for a second, when Zuko is sick and he's going through like a shamanic purge almost, like I'm thinking of like an ayahuasca ceremony and he's gotta like sweat it
Yeah,
out and
he
like
even
he's
drinks the tea. Iroh gives him the tea.
yeah,
Drink this tea.
exactly. There's so many shamanic elements in this show. It's crazy that it was made. I mean, 2005. I was only 10 years old, so like if I had watched it back then, this would all go right over my head. But I'm so happy that we're diving into it now. But yeah, it's cool that he goes through this shamanic, like this purging ceremony. Except he's led to the darkness, just like when Christ was in the desert and the devil, the Satan was like, "I can promise you everything, riches, immortality, whatever you want." All you got to do is join me. And that same archetype is in his sister, which when children are young, they're like empty cups. And it was like Zuko's dad filled her with all of his trauma, all of the power struggles that he had not yet integrated, and dumped it onto her. And now she's getting in Zuko's way, and Zuko is struggling to overcome yet again another family member who is trying to drag him back into this old blood feud that he wants to release. It's
Yeah,
fascinating.
but that's that final trial. It reminds me of the Tale of the Green Knight. You know,
Mm,
or is it Sir Gawain and the Green Knight? You
yeah.
know, it's it kind of reminds me of that in a way. And so he falls for Azula's temptations, and he goes back to the Fire Nation as this big hero, even though Aang is not dead, and Azula kind of knows this, so she uses it to
Yeah.
her advantage and tells their father that Zuko killed him, and then tells Zuko that it's because she knew that even though she's the one that hit him with lightning,
Mm,
and she tells Zuko it's because it was a favor that she knew that it would help him come into their father's favor
yeah.
again.
It's very
So I'm just doing,
conspiratorial.
yeah, I'm just doing this thing for your own good, you know.
Right,
I'm
yeah.
lying for your own good.
So manipulative, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then when he's there, he's not happy
Mm-mm.
at all. He's more miserable than he's ever been in the whole
Mhm.
show, and even though he's got everything he's ever wanted,
Yeah.
and you know, and he even is the reason why they catch Iroh and they throw him in prison.
Yeah.
And one of the best scenes in the whole show is when Zuko is wanting to, since he feels safety with Iroh, he
Mhm.
sneaks to the prison cell and he asks Iroh, why am I not happy?
Mm.
And for a little bit, Iroh is silent, but after another visit, he talks to Zuko, and the whole scene is beautiful. It's like it's beautifully
It's
animated, but
very
it's so
cinematic.
cinematically shot because when Iroh is talking, he's in the cell. The the camera is inside with him, so you can't see the bars. But then when Zuko
Yeah.
is talking,
You
it's
see the
still
barrier
inside, but
between them.
it's
Yeah.
looking out. So it looks like Zuko is the one behind the bars.
Yes. Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
like
it's
when Iroh's locked up, he's like doing push-ups. He's like making the best of it, but Zuko doesn't know what to do, and he's free. He's not behind bars, but he's still trapped by this ideology that his family has imposed on him.
yeah, and he's playing the part of you know the fool in a way to where he they think he's just like this old man that's like I'm locked up, and
Mm.
everything, and he's putting like the pillow underneath his clothes so it looks like he's not like hitting or hip, which
They
I
don't want
love.
to like show anyone that he's like been building muscle this whole time, and like yeah, he's like hiding it. Yeah, he's like trying to be subtle about it.
Yeah, which is really cool. But yeah, then he's revealing to Zuko about his mother's side being connected to the past Avatar,
Mhm.
and so he has that light and darkness within him. The shot when he says it, when he says his mother, it shows his face that's not scarred, and
Mhm.
then when he mentions his father's side,
Yeah.
it goes to his scarred half,
Hmm.
and it's his shadow half, the way the lighting is hit. And it's such a cool scene. Like
Yeah,
I
it's so
love it.
symbolic. Yeah.
So symbolic. And then, around that time, that's when Zuko leaves. He leaves the Fire Nation to um he finds Aang
Yeah.
and teaches him firebending, which is what's really cool about this is something I skipped over earlier and plays into the whole integrating shadow and healing trauma, family trauma. Is earlier in season one, Aang wants to jump into just doing firebending right away,
Yeah.
and he meets this like hermit, um, old fire general that's hiding out, and he begs him to teach him firebending, and the the fire bender master is just like, no, you need to do this in order. There is
Yeah.
a a way you need to cook a pie,
Yeah, you can't
and
skip step one and like go all the way to step four, you know? It's like, yeah.
yeah, and since Aang, since this is in season one, and he doesn't even know how to control the Avatar state yet,
Mm.
Roku comes through, and since Roku has this kind of regret because he he died and left all this for Aang, and he blames himself for the state of the world. So since his spirit still has that regret, and Aang doesn't have the control over that state, um, Roku comes through,
Mm.
and he tells the Fire Blade Master, "You have to do this. I am your like the fire avatar. I come from you. You need to listen to me."
Hmm.
And he like scares him, and he vanishes. And then the firebrand master is like, "Oh yeah, I will. Please don't hurt me." And then
Hmm.
Anger's like, "Okay," because Anger's he's back. And he's like, "Okay, great, thanks." And he has no idea what's happened.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's unaware. Absolutely.
yeah, so that's crazy. So when he starts to learn fire, um, from this first master, um, he gets ahead of himself and accidentally burns Kantara. Luckily,
Hmm.
she's a healer, so she heals
Yeah.
herself. But he still has that trauma. He's like, "I'm never gonna fire bend again." And even Kantara's like, "That's stupid. You're the actor. You have to." So one of the first hurdles when Zuko comes and he's you know shredding his ancestral
Yeah, and he's on
trauma and
his
integrating the
own
shadow.
personal hero's journey now. Like he's leaving the Fire Kingdom to go kind of like redeem himself and join with Aang and kind of connect with this other side, kind of like we talked about, like the spiritual side that he may have lost touch with because of that family situation. Now he's gonna go
Exactly.
redeem it or reclaim it.
Yeah, reclaim it. That's a good word. And so when he's teaching Aang has that resistance, he has that previous trauma from burning Katara. So they both
Mhm.
are having to um, overcome this um,
Traumas.
this trauma, which is really cool, and together. And Zuko also finds out that all his when he's firebending, he's using his chi, his his inner chi, his breath. That's all anger. That was his angst. So he can't even fire
Agni.
bend, and he can't fire bend just like he used to. He just like
Mhm.
and just this little flame,
Yeah.
and so him and Aang go to seek out the original fire um benders, the dragons were supposed to be extinct, but there's this lost tribe called the Dragon Warriors, and you
Mm.
seek them out, and they reveal that there are dragons left, and they learn the way of the dragon, and they rediscover all this ancient spiritual history of the Fire Nation that no one in the Fire Nation knows
Hmm.
anymore.
It's like it's been covered up, it's been forgotten, it's been lost. It's,
Yeah,
the spiritual knowledge of the modern day is kind of being slowly uncovered. Like that's why topics like Tartaria, I think, are becoming so widely like people are very excited about all that because they're finally discovering like the lost city of Atlantis. It's been like hidden, and people are trying to discover something that used to be um, well known and now is sort of in the background. You have to like really dig for it.
yeah, that's why I was I felt this really like happiness and relief almost when Notre Dame burned,
Hmm.
because that was a symbol of destroying a lot of northern Gaelic cultures,
Yeah.
and they've been hiding a lot, like the Gaelic um like ancient knowledge
Hmm.
has all basically been hidden, destroyed,
Yeah.
and that
St.
was like
Patrick's Day too, like wiping out the Druidic history and the yeah, that like
yes.
Gaelic history was kind of
I've been
dominated by
I've been doing research on be sharing it in my Fool's Barge group about literally like shooting the messenger, the barge where they held a lot of the knowledge. So literally when they wiped out the bards and that whole culture, there goes all that knowledge out the window.
Yeah.
But yeah, to go back to your Avatar, yeah, so they learned from the deep hidden history and everything, and what was it? So he gets the power from the ancients, which is really cool. And yeah, that whole like Zuko integrates the shadow, so does Aang. They become whole. They help each other out. And that brotherhood, that fellowship is very
Something he never
important.
really had before. Like his own
Yeah,
sister was trying to manipulate him. He's never really had like a brother or like a sibling that was supporting him other than Iroh as an uncle.
yeah. And then I think one of the last things we can talk about is the Dali.
Hmm. The Dalai Lama? What?
Um, the Dali was that was the secret shadow agency. There was no Warren Boston say that was mind
Hmm.
controlling. They the Jolies. They go to the underground under the lake to try to get Jet and find Appa, and
Hmm.
you see all the Jolies were sort of like they work for the government, and it was like shadow agents, but
Hmm.
they have these. The Dolly also have these female characters, females who all kind of look the same, but there's different people, and they mind controlled them
Oh.
to think they was all the same person
Hmm.
because they was creating split personalities,
Sounds like
which
MK
is
Ultra a little bit.
yeah, it is. It's totally. It's that whole thing with the Dolly and Julie, and then mind controlling Jet. That
Hmm.
was a whole MK Ultra some like
Hmm.
revealed in a kid show. They were just like, this is what's happening, and it's not mind controlling as a lot of fantasy things see it. It
No, no,
was
it's more of like revelation of the method, right?
yeah, it's more, and we were just talking about this on the last Weaving Spiders. I think it was episode 73. And we talked because it's Aries season.
Hmm.
Ram Aries has that the symbol is
Split.
split,
Hmm.
and then you have oh, the other thing we talked about is how DID is becoming a trend in on TikTok. Uh,
DID?
um, I forget what it fully stands for, but it's split personality disorder.
Oh, yes, dissociative identity disorder. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't remember that
It's
first
okay,
name.
yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about, but I was like, I don't know the acronym. Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
that
and I
was
do remember Chance talking about this. Like the TikTok culture is almost convincing people that they are that they have borderline personality disorder or DID, or like it's becoming a trend to become someone on the spectrum of autism. It's like the cultural influence of something like TikTok, which I use for fun just to like post these little podcast videos. But yeah, that can be like almost weaponized in this MK Ultra fashion to manipulate the consciousness. I guess that's why they say like mass formation psychosis, and you can take that literally from what we're discussing here.
yeah,
And so,
yeah, definitely. I thought so. Definitely, if anyone wants to hear more about that, Weaving Spiders episode
yeah,
73. That was a good episode. That was really fun. But um, the the very last thing I wanted to mention, to bring it back around to the Earth feminine, I
hmm
forgot to mention one of a very good group of working. You have all these different factions. You have like the White Lotus and everything, but there's a group called the Kyoshi Warriors,
yes,
and that I love the Kyoshi warriors. Suki is a really strong feminine, and
Mm.
it's really cool. And what's interesting is they have fans,
Yeah.
which is air.
Hmm.
That's air. So they're working with other elements too. So that's one of the reasons why they were such a strong, positive um, female group, is
Mm.
because yeah, they're a Earth Kingdom tribe, but they incorporate all the other
Yeah.
elements. So they're much more of a whole feminine, and which is really cool.
Yeah.
And
It's kind of like what you were saying earlier too, like earth and air, it's hard for them to interact, but the fact that these Kyoshi warriors could integrate those two energies together and like synchronize them almost, it's very
yeah,
impressive and powerful for sure. I love that you brought that up. I almost forgot about that.
yeah. And if there was there was one thing, if we had time, I could briefly mention.
Sure, of course. Yeah,
It's
we're
really cool.
just about almost at 3 hours. I do have a closing question for you after this,
Okay,
but I
yeah.
would love to hear this last bit that you
So
have
the
in mind.
last thing is it's about the comics. And first thing I want to say is the comic. To me, I'm a stickler when it comes to these type of things, because there's the comics and the novels was supervised by either Mike or Brian, the creators, but
Hmm.
someone else wrote them.
Okay.
And so
It's
they're
good to
not.
separate those two from what the show
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
yeah. So until Mike and Brian, could they opened Avatar Studios and they're gonna be making more animated series and movies,
Hmm.
which is really cool. But so until they like reference something exactly in one of the future series, I'm not considering canon. It's just fun bonus
Yeah.
material.
Yeah.
But it is cool to look at. One of the things they did carry over from the comics are the air acolytes in the Legend of Korra, the
Hmm.
people that live on Air Temple Island and upkeep the air temples.
Oh.
Um, like Tenzin Angson's his wife, how they met. She was an air acolyte. She left
Hmm.
her family home to join that group. But that's from the comics.
But it's like a
So
sacred duty to maintain those air temples. Like they're a piece of history, especially in Aang's time when he was like the last of his people. They were eradicated. It was like a holocaust of the air
yeah,
nation, and these air temples are like these holy shrines that should be preserved. That's really interesting that they reincorporate that in the comics.
yeah, and but in the comic, I think the one it's mentioning is Smoke and Shadow. But in the comic, The Last Airbender, Smoke and Shadow, um, Aang meditates with these meditation beads, and they have four bigger beads, and
Hmm.
each one has one of the nation's symbols on it. And as
Nice.
he's meditating, he he gets frustrated and he breaks one of them off.
Hmm.
And the one he breaks off is the air
Hmm.
nation symbol, the air nomad symbol. And
Wow.
after that, he keeps on seeing Yang Chen, the last airbender before him. Um, like she's like appearing to him in spirit form and
Hmm.
talking, but she's muted. He can't hear what she's saying
Oh.
because he broke that off.
Yeah, that communication is now interrupted, that they can no
Yeah.
longer receive
So
messages from.
she literally like leads him to this spot,
Mhm.
and it's this spot that used to be owned by um or not owned but inhabited by the air nations before the war started, and then other people came in.
Mm.
But back when she was the Avatar, there was the spirit, because back then that was when spirits roamed the earth freely, and there was a spirit called um, General Old Iron. She got iron in the name.
Mm.
He's like this giant samurai being, but he um, is upset with and annoyed by the humans that are living there. So he
Mm.
wants to get rid of them.
Mm.
And she makes a contract with him to appease him. So there was like a treaty almost, right? And
Sounds very biblical, by the way. It's like Yahweh
yeah,
is like wants to like punish all the humans, but there's like an intermediary who's like, listen, like I'll work something out if we can arrange some kind of deal. That's just what I thought of when you
yeah.
brought it up. Yeah.
And when what's interesting is when the reason why she's trying to communicate this to Aang is because um, there's been an incident with the people that are living there now that had no idea. This has been hundreds and hundreds of years since
Mm,
then about where about this treaty. So they're not following it anymore. So he's upset again. He's going to come back
mm.
and he's going to destroy
This
all the
Iron
humans there.
Samurai
And
guy.
yeah, and so Aang is trying to make a deal with him, and well, he's trying to make a deal with him, but also not basically sign a contract.
Hmm.
Like he's trying to make everyone happy, so like everything's balanced. But he
Yeah.
doesn't want to like sign a contract for the spirit.
Hmm.
And I think he doesn't want to renew that old contract
Right.
that his last incarnation did, and so he's trying to find a way to fix it without doing that. And I thought that was a really cool representation of you don't make deals with entities.
Yeah, right.
You don't
Because
do
then
it.
you're like
Uh,
bound to that entity, like whether it's a contract, if you think it's like gonna be beneficial for you, like, you're inviting in an energy that can control you and manipulate you, the contract should be avoided. I totally agree. It's
yeah. So I thought that was a very interesting lesson that they put in the comics, and they just kind of snuck in there. Like
yeah.
here's this like cool storyline, and I was like, I loved it. I don't like everything about the comics and in the novels, but like I said, they are cool. And there was moments like that, and I'm like, hey, okay, this is pretty. This is pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, you certainly
Um,
taught me something new. I didn't realize that there were these sort of like spin-off comics, and the fact that like this spiritual contract that we just talked about kind of reminds me of like kids who could like mess around with a Ouija board and like all of a sudden they accidentally will manifest the situation where it's like, all right, the spirit is now manipulating them. It's inhabiting their space, and they welcomed it in. They invited it in with this ritual or this contract, and it's certainly something to think about when diving into esoteric, occult, mystical topics. Is like kind of to be careful a little bit, to
yes,
have some
yes,
discernment.
definitely. And the last thing I wanted to say to kind of wrap up our whole
Yeah.
conversation is the lesson I got from The Last Airbender
Hmm.
and the whole series is be your own avatar. All the
Yeah.
elements are inside you, like we mentioned
Hmm.
earlier. You are that bridge, that liminal space is
Hmm.
within you. I always think of Fully Coolly, that anime when everything's coming out of his forehead.
Mm.
I always think of that. You have that space. You have that power. You just got to do it. So be your own avatar, be your own hero, be your own fool. Just you have it all within you.
It's a beautiful message to leave everyone with because, but when it comes to the four elements, if you play with fire, you could get burned. Water, although it could be a healing element, you could drown in water. It's too much air pressure can damage you. And of course, earth, earth is our mother and our home, but you could be kind of consumed by earth as well. So it's good to just follow your own path, listen to your inner guidance, and connect with each element. We don't want to separate fire like we said earlier and say, oh, fire is evil. It's like, no, we need to integrate every shadow, every side. We're more than four-dimensional beings, but in this context, we should think about the fifth sacred thing. We have earth, water, air, and fire, but that fifth sacred thing, and I'm kind of referencing Starhawk, is spirit. Spirit
Yes,
is the fifth sacred thing. So it's
yeah.
a
I don't know if
beautiful.
you've heard about this, but apparently there's been studies where they've cutting people off from the Schumann resonance,
Mm.
which the
Oh,
Schumann resonance is um, what the Earth vibrates at. Is
right.
and so, but in these studies, when they cut them off, after a little bit they go crazy
Wow. Okay.
and they get a bunch of mental disorders. And they've found out that in bigger cities there's so much like, you know,
Interference, right?
frequency
Yeah.
and interference that they can't detect the Schumann resonance.
Wow.
So
I'm gonna
that's
be thinking about that. I'm gonna be traveling to Dallas for Easter, and I've never been to Texas. I've never been to a city like, well, I mean, I've been to New York City, but
ground
grounding will
it
be important. Yeah.
as much as
Yeah.
you can. And those that's why in my book, and that's not why, but it's something that I think is cool looking back.
Hmm.
I chose the cosmic egg, not Star Wars space theory,
Right.
because if we are tied to that Schumann resonance,
Hmm.
how do we go to space?
Well said. Well said. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think people are very interested in the external, like the hidden occult material, but a lot of it, like you said, is within. You can become your own personal avatar. You can follow your own inner path, discover those elements within yourself, and they will be your guides for life.
Yes, yes,
Beautiful.
yes.
Well, I do have one last question to wrap things up, and this is before we ask this question, can you let everyone know where they could find you if they want to learn more about your book, your work, your photography, your art? How can people reach you, Kris?
Yeah. So I have a Telegram group. I have a channel and a group. The channel is what I broadcast off of every new moon.
Mm,
I do this thing called New Moon FM, flow music, not frozen music. It's just this place where I explore music and I talk. It has this traditional late night radio vibe where I play music and then I talk.
mm,
Um, and yeah, the first one I talked about the cult side of rock and roll,
mm-hmm.
and so I do things like that.
You
But
get into
every
any
new
like Led
moon,
Zeppelin or things like that?
yeah, and
Nice. Okay.
but every new moon is a new genre,
Mm,
and it's new music because new moons are void days. It's that rest day.
yeah.
Um, so new moon, new you, new music. Um,
What is that
and,
Telegram channel called?
Fool's Bar Radio
Okay,
is the channel.
Fool's Bard
And then
Radio
I have a community chat called Fool's Bar Tavern.
Tavern. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah,
Let's
there's that. And then I'm thinking about expanding and planning on eventually expanding into, you have those like 24-hour like lo-fi streams
Oh
on
yeah, yeah,
YouTube,
on YouTube,
but
yeah.
doing like every maybe like every like Sunday or something for a few hours,
Mm.
not like a full 24 hours, but for a few hours, just to see, because I've had requests to do it on other places besides Telegram.
You want to do
So
like a music stream, like like a couple hours live, like streaming music?
yeah,
Awesome.
um,
Okay.
so because Telegram's nice because you can stream, um, and it's they don't monetize like your music or
Oh
anything
yeah,
like
no,
that right
this
now.
this
So
app has changed my entire life. I mean, Telegram is what brought us together.
yeah,
There were other factors of course, but it was really
yeah,
Telegram has been a bridge for this community and very thankful
yeah.
for
But
that.
then of course, Weaving Spiders Welcome.
Hmm.
I'm on that sometimes.
Can definitely
I
find you
also
there.
yeah
Absolutely.
I also do Flow State on the Weaving Spider channel, which happens on Wednesdays. Um, yeah, and then of course I'm in all those Telegram groups,
Hmm.
and
You got some art on Instagram too. I've seen some of that.
yeah, I do post my art to Instagram. I also recently started a Minds um, page, whatever, to post art, to see if I can slowly shift from Instagram to Minds, if that's a possibility.
So this is a different platform. It's called Minds.
Yeah, minds.com. It's an
Oh,
app and a
okay.
website. It's
First time I
supposed
ever
to
heard of
be
it.
a some of us are that are on the Telegram group are on Minds.
I'm gonna
It's
check it
kind of
out.
like it's kind of like on Facebook, but like it's supposed to be like uncensored and all that
Oh,
and
cool.
everything.
Okay.
So I'm filling that out to see if that's a place that, 'cause, like, the idea of Instagram was cool, but I also don't want to be on Instagram
I don't blame
because
you.
it is owned by Facebook. So
Yeah.
like, so I'm trying to see if there is another place that I can have hold that space for myself.
That's good to know.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, and so just follow me on Instagram or on Minds or Telegram. I'm Shaggy of the Shire,
Shaggy of the Shire.
which is a play on Shaggy from Scooby Doo because
Hmm.
I've always been a big Scooby Doo fan, and he's like that full character.
Yeah,
And then
definitely like the
there's
fool with the dog as well. Yep.
yeah, he has the dog, and then the Shire is like this perfect utopia.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
there was a
Garden of
perfect
Eden.
society, it would just look like the Shire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Well
it's like
said.
a full in the perfect world.
I love that.
It's kind of like where I got that name from. But yeah, follow me there for updates on my book. I don't have a solid release date yet, but and of course I would probably be doing the podcast circuit when it does release.
Awesome.
So
Do
keep
you
eye
have a
on me. And
name picked out? Is it gonna be like the Shaggy of the Shire podcast? Like, what are you thinking for that? Or Fool's
oh,
Bar Radio?
I'm gonna be doing the podcast circuit probably as well,
Oh,
and
okay.
that'll be going
I
on
consider
other
you
people's
starting your own podcast.
podcasts.
I see. Okay, nice,
Yeah,
nice. I'll definitely be
yeah,
listening. I'm honored that you came on mine. And now I would like to ask you this final question to close everything out.
yes.
So it's funny, we were talking about our childhood. Avatar was released when we were younger, and you also encountered this little girl in the video store, and you were able to introduce her to Avatar. So this question I want to ask you. So imagine your younger self, whether that was last year or last month or like a decade ago, like however far back you want to go, and you can go back and give your old self one message to help guide them. What would you say to your past self?
Everything that needs to happen and be done will happen and be done as it's going to be, and you are going to be strong enough to work through it. Because looking back at everything that I've been through in my life, um, in the moment I was always like, oh, I don't know how this is gonna like ever end. Like I don't know how I'm gonna get through this, and like
Mm.
I'm much more stronger than what I ever thought, and I'm realizing now how much that I actually do love myself, and it's really cool. And so possibly just reminding myself that like there is this plan, and
Mm.
you are going to be able to everything that's going to happen to you. You can it's that it's just obstacles of life, and like life wouldn't be anything um without obstacles. Like
Mhm.
you're just walking, and like
Yeah,
boring that would
it would
be.
get very boring
Like
very quick. Yeah.
yeah, so maybe probably that.
I love that. And you've certainly inspired me. There's been a lot of talk in this last 3 hours. We're almost at 3 and 15 minutes, where we're reflecting on where we've been and where we are now. And I just want to end with this thought because you've reminded me. My old yoga teacher would tell me this, and this very much relates to what you just said. And we can end here. Is that um, she would say, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. So for all of us here, anyone listening, thank you for staying with us. We are where we are supposed to be. So thank you for being here with me, and I'd love to talk to you again soon, Kris.
Yes, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Absolutely. Peace.
Peace.
All right. Hello, folks. Thank you so much for sticking around for the outro. I know this is a huge episode, but man, it was packed full of so many good insights. And I want to thank Kris one more time. Please make sure you guys check out the Weaving Spiders Welcome group, where Kris and myself have appeared on streams. You can look us up on YouTube. A lot of fun there. So happy we all got to connect. And Kris is an excellent guest. I really loved having him on here. And it was so cool because he knows Avatar very well, and the two of us barely scratched the surface. So when it comes to Avatar the Last Airbender, let's just say we could probably make a couple more episodes about it and still only barely scratch the surface. But before I get into the content of the episode, I just want to say if I sound a little different, it's because, yes, I finally got a new microphone. So here it is, the first time ever in action being used on this outro. So thank you guys for the support. I wasn't sure if I was going to take podcasting very seriously or whatever, but I'm having a lot of fun, so I decided to invest a little bit. So we have a very interesting episode here, and I'm really thankful that Kris was willing to open up about his experiences with cerebral palsy. I did have a cousin who had cerebral palsy, and I never really got to meet him. He passed away when I was pretty young. So with that being said, I'm thankful that Kris opened up to share his experiences, because you never know, there might be someone out there who has a similar situation. And speaking of that, I'm really happy that Kris and I got to dive into the character of Toph, because Toph, if you had just listened, you know, Toph is blind. So she is a great person to look to as far as inspiration with someone with a disability who turns it into their superpower. But we covered so many topics tonight, and a couple I just want to bring up. It was really cool to dive into Scientology. I don't really know much about it, but it would be cool to learn a bit more. Kris also provided so many rich details about the astrological lineups with the release date of the show, as well as the archetypal or the astrological characteristics of each character. And we also got to give a shout out to Kaylee. Kaylee, if you're listening, thank you for providing a lot of these insights to us. Very interesting as well to think about some of the character arcs. So whether that's Sokka or Aang or Katara, it's very interesting. I'd still believe this genuinely, that Avatar the Last Airbender was the greatest children's show ever produced. Maybe Adventure Time was the runner-up, but gotta say, the show is life-changing. And again, there are so many topics we could go into that we just simply did not have time to jump in, so we'll have to do it again some other time. But for now, I will leave you with this last message. Wherever you are, folks, be here, be now, and be you.